my very first fire mission, when I was in country, we're sitting there, we're at Fob Marja, I'm on my computer, so we're watching, and we have like a Predator or something up, and we get eyes on like an IED in placer, and we're like, oh, there's an IED in placer. And this is like at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so there's not really a lot of air going on right now. We don't have air on station or anything. And immediately I go to start doing a fire mission, and with HIMARS, it's all digital. You send it over like a digital chat and stuff like that normally. But when I get ready to start pulling the information and sending up the fire mission, all the data went down, the network went down, and I'm like, oh fuck. And what happened was, when I first got there, the guy I took over from was like, hey man, here's this radio, it's called a netted iridium, and I keep it programmed, I keep batteries in it, and here's the net for the firing battery, and here's the net for the command element to do the approval. And I was like, all right, cool. He's like, yeah, I just do like 1 or 2 radio checks a day, and I just keep that there just in case. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll just keep doing that. Well, when that shit went down, I grabbed that radio, and I'm like, this is me at Just Fire, grid 1, 2, 3. I'm doing like an actual like, and I'm shaking too, because this is real life. And I'm watching 3 or 4 guys put in an IED, and I'm like, fuck. I sent up that first fire mission. OPSO comes in, checks it out. He's like, hey, it's approved. I'm like, approved, fire target number, whatever. And they shoot, and it's just like, boom, the screen whites out, and fucking comes back in to focus, and you see one dude like stumbling around. There's guys on the ground, and my OPSO was like, can you do that again? Let's go!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's another episode of I Came with Fire podcast. Tonight we are here with host of the former Action Guys podcast, Justin Kramer. Justin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, man? It's nice to have you on here.
Hey, what's up? Host of the former Action Guys podcast. Also, my website's Kramer Graphics, jkramergraphics.com. Yeah, I was a Marine for 12 years. Got out 2018. Joined in 2006. Originally came in like a moron, open contract. And they made me a mechanic. Yeah, I was hoping to do infantry, and made the mistake of coming in open contract. They said that was a good way to get infantry when it wasn't available at the time. And I knew they were lying, but I was like, between like, if people that have listened to my podcast, like, I was getting ready to leave. I didn't know until the day I was at MEPS to go to boot camp that I didn't have my MOS. Like, I had sold my car, moved out of my apartment, and quit my job. And I'm like at MEPS getting ready to leave. And they're like, so what job do you want to do? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's infantry, right? And they're like, no. They're like, that's not available. You could be a supply guy. You could do this. And I'm like, dude, fuck that. Yeah, I was like, oh, man, I don't want to do any of those things. And they even mentioned being a mechanic. And I'm like, dude, screw that. And so anyways, I came in open contract, ended up becoming a mechanic. For like 3 years, and then did a lateral move to 0861, became a forward observer, fire support man is what we call it, and then eventually a JTAC, and then a JTAC evaluator, and then I got out.
That's absolutely hilarious to me how the recruiters always get their dudes. It's like you never actually know like what you're signing up for, and then like they have this deck, right, that they're going through, and they're like, okay guys, you need to get this many people to sign up, and they're like, all right, and they see you coming through the door, and they're like, bet that dude looks like I bet I can get his ass to
They
do
get their
anything.
hot system.
Hold on, and they just like
they
slick to the back of the page, and they're like, okay, water purification specialist. Yeah. Bet I can talk him into it.
Hey, listen, man. Do you want to save lives every day?
Do you know who Pauly Shore is?
Do you want to work with dihydrogen monoxide? It's in so many different dangerous compounds and chemicals. You're going to work with it every. Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah. You're going to 100%. Purify dihydrogen monoxide. That sounds really smart. Absolutely. Now, the open general joke in the Air Force is if you come in open general, you're going to wind up security forces or maintenance. So, yeah, I mean, it's good to know.
That's what happens.
You say that, Brandon, but you know my recruitment story. And I literally put security forces because I originally tried to get in with the Air Force. I took my ASVAB through the Air Force.
He's like, I wasn't good enough for security forces.
That's what they told me because they were like, like your ASVAB scores were good. Like,
sorry guys, he spelled his name right. Can't have
give us your top 3, and we'll try to get you one of them. And that was where I became disillusioned with the Air Force because I was like, like I'm really trying to go for I don't want to be a mechanic, and I definitely like I wanted to
work on
fly
planes,
jets.
I'll tell you that.
When I was 12. Like that's all I ever wanted to do. I had the box edition of like the cards, which had every airplane in them, and I could tell you everything about every aircraft. TJ, you already know because you and I were doing this thing together, and I was like, oh, the F-16 thrust to weight ratio, like everything about it I could tell you, right? Like when it was commissioned, like how many kills it has, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And then as I was going through my my enlistment procedures, right, they came back and they were like, well, you know, your ASVAB scores were good. Give us your top 3 and we might be able to get one of them for you. And I was like, ooh, maybe I'm dumber than I ever realized. And as I was walking out, the Army guy, and I can still remember his name to this day, fucking Staff Sergeant Hamilton. I still remember this guy's name. Stopped me in the hallway and he goes, hey, you know, in the Army, we can guarantee what job you're going to go into. And that was like,
we're not concerned with the fact you're functionally retarded.
Bro, you know what, Chris just admitted that the recruiter didn't even have to break out the good negotiation tactics. Just up front,
no sign-on bonus, no nothing.
Right,
dude, I was
come on down.
That's right, dude. You get a free pin for enlisting.
I was so broke, and I was so married.
Sit down with this coloring sheet.
Right. No. Here's these crayons. Don't chew on them. They're from next door, the Marine recruiting office.
The Marine Corps recruiter did speak to me from across the room, but I remember Staff Sergeant Hamilton told him to go fuck off. He was like, no, he's signing. Go fuck off.
You know how those dudes are definitely rivals with each other.
Oh, yeah.
My mom's neighbor was an Army recruiter, and he would always be like, hey, man, come on down, dude. I'm like, no, dude.
What's
I'm joining the Marines, bro.
Boy?
I'm joining the Marines.
Looks like the Navy recruiter, dude.
He's like, no, yeah.
You
he's
see
just
this
like,
name stitched on my ass? Come on.
Right. He was trying to bring
Got
me
his
in.
shirt tied in a knot.
Yeah. No. Yeah. My good buddy.
God bless
he used
you.
to.
We love you.
Hell yeah. He used to host a podcast with me, but he was a recruiter for a long time, and so he was security forces like I was, but all the other branch recruiters that he was with were all like personnelists from their branch, and so he was the only one that carried a gun or did anything like that. And so it was kind of like this weird dynamic because he was the alpha among all these other branches, and they would get super butthurt about it because he knew all the shit that they tried to convince the recruits, these kids trying to get into the Marine Corps, the Army, that they knew about, and he was always checking them on their facts and shit like that. I don't know, it's kind of funny. He always would send me snaps of him giving them shit, and it's like some Marine personnelist who doesn't know anything about anything. I just thought it was kind of funny because he felt like Big Dick Nick walking around the recruiting office as an Air Force guy. I was like, dude, that's pretty rare, man.
That is rare for an Air Force guy to have the most experience like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
So to be fair, I will say my recruiter told me. So my story is a long one, right? I tried to join. I was a senior in high school after September 11th, or on September 11th, and I went to the recruiter's office that week. And
oh shit.
Yeah, I was like one of those guys. I was like, fuck it, man. I've been talking about it, and I've been talking about joining the military. My dad was in the military. My grandfathers were in the military. It's but no one had joined the Marines yet. So I was like, I read Marine Sniper, and I was like, at first, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an Army Ranger. I was like, yeah, Army Ranger, yeah, And then I read Marine Sniper, and I was like, dude, fuck that. That shit sounds badass. Freaking best snipers in the world,
really does.
And so my senior year, September 11th happened, and it was one of those oh, put up or shut up, you've been talking about it kind of deal. To myself, no one was saying that to me, obviously, but
right, personally.
So I went down to the recruiter and started talking to him, and then a couple months later, dude, I got arrested for weed, and that kind of delayed everything.
And where are you at? Where are you from?
Indiana. From Indiana.
I'm from Wisconsin, so Midwest boys.
Exactly.
That shit means something back there versus in California or
Oregon. For sure. It's I got charged with was a Class D felony. It's the lowest felony, but then they always bring it down. So I got arrested, and then that obviously my recruiter wasn't appreciative of that. And actually, my very first recruiter was a scumbag. The first guy I talked to, I had two recruiters because it took so long for me to join. The first recruiter I had was actually a scumbag. I found out he ended up he started coming to the high school at like lunchtime to like hang out with us, those of us that went down to the recruiter's office after September 11th. And then he started like talking to some of the girls and shit, and then ended up getting arrested because they had a hotel party, and it was like him and all these high school chicks, and they were doing coke and stuff. And I was like, "What?
Holy crap, dude!"
Well, you know what the best.
If you're gonna go to jail for something big, I guess.
If you're a recruiter, you know what the best thing about high school graduates is, right?
I don't even want to. I don't know.
I know, right? Where are we going?
This is dangerous.
They're all 18. And my age stays the same, right? Like they're always 18.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, it was not a good thing for him. He was he got arrested, he got kicked out, and so anyways, I got arrested. And then I convinced my buddy to join too. And we went down together and everything, and he didn't get arrested obviously, so he ended up joining. And I was having his going away party a year later. This is like, I'm almost done with my probation and all this stuff. Having his going away party, and then I'm going to be going down to sign up again. And I get fucking arrested again at his going away party, having him a party. And it was like, God damn it. And then eventually a couple years later, I got to finally join. Literally didn't get in until 2006. So that's how long
you get arrested for the second time.
Weed again,
damn it!
And I wasn't even smoking. Dude. That was the thing. Was I knew I was.
Ricky Williams over here.
I was on probation and I was almost done, and I was planning on going to the recruiter as soon as I was done. So I wasn't even smoking anything. We were having a party. We had this huge ass house party, and the cops came. And when they came, everybody emptied their pockets and stuck it in the couch. So when they came in, they found weed and they found like a bag of coke, and so we got arrested again. And or I got arrested again, and then I had to wait another year. And luckily, I could have gotten really screwed by the prosecutor because this is my second time getting arrested, and I'm still on probation. I'm still like finishing up my drug and alcohol classes.
Yeah.
And I get called down to his office for some meeting, and I'm like 18, 19. I'm like 19 at this point. Yeah. I don't have money for a lawyer or anything, so I'm like going down to the prosecutor's office for this meeting. And I'm sitting there waiting on him, and this is like 2002. So, no cell phones really. I'm sitting there reading a book. I'm reading Marine Sniper, right?
Yeah.
He comes in. He's like, "Oh, that's a really good book." I was like, "Yeah, I'm hoping when all this is over." I was like, I really enjoy it. I'm hoping when all this is over, I can join the Marine Corps. And he's like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, have your recruiter give me a call. And if you're not lying, then I'll try to help you out." And he gave me the minimum. So he gave me like 6 months of supervised probation, 6 months of unsupervised probation, and like some more drug and alcohol classes. So basically I would have been done within a year.
That's pretty awesome.
Then, it was a hookup for sure. Well, then I go down to MEPS. I finish all my stuff. Another year's gone by now. I finish all my shit. I'm off probation. Talk to the recruiter. Go down to MEPS. And he's like, "Hey, man, you've been arrested twice for drugs. You got to talk to the wizard. You got to talk to the psychiatrist or whatever they got down there."
Right.
And I'm like, okay. So that was part of my MEPS thing. And he fucking delayed my entry for another year. To see, he said on the report, like,
stay clean.
Seems like a good guy, has a job, well, clean cut, but, can he stay out of trouble? Right. So he delayed me for another year, and I was so mad, dude.
You were on the other side of the go to war, go to jail crowd. You were just after that. That reminds me of a house party that I was having, and this is after I was in the military. And we were I was a young specialist at the time, so I can't remember. I think I had just gotten promoted, right? So it's like we were doing the whole like, oh, Hambrook got promoted, so drinks on him tonight. Everybody show up at his house from the platoon, right? So
E4
it was like
Mafia initiate.
Yeah, it was like one of those things. And so one of the E5s in my platoon shows up, right? And we're hanging out, and then house parties as they go, devolves on post, right? And I lived on the Air Force side of Joint Base at the time, and so like people were outside, people were inside. There was a fire out back. Like things got loud. Like MPs
it's like an actual party.
Yeah, it was a party for sure. And then the MPs ended up rolling by at some point, and I think somebody had called the MPs because shit was loud. And so the MPs show up and they want to talk to the owner of the house, and that was me, of course. And so I go out and I'm talking to him, and before I go outside, like the E5 grabs my arm and he goes, "Hey, by the way, just so you know, I stuck my Glock 45 in the cushions of your couch." And I was like, I was like, wait, what? like there are firearms on the right, and like he lived off post, right? So now it's like we have a potentially, I didn't know it at the moment, but I was like, a potentially unregistered firearm on post stuck. Like if this shit goes off the rails, all of a sudden I was like, I sobered up really quick, and I was like, all right, dudes, like this shit just got really serious.
Like, why would you do that, bro?
Why would you do that to me?
Real.
It was just like, and you gave me that.
You tell me, we'll put it upstairs in the bedroom.
Right.
You know?
It was exactly
better
one
than
of
the
those
couch.
things.
Yeah.
No
And
doubt.
then come to find out, like this relationship goes on for a couple years, and this guy goes on to get out of the military, and then he went on to get hooked on drugs, and I hope he's okay to this day. I haven't talked to him in, I don't think I've talked to him in over a decade. Like, I hope he's still okay. But it was just one of those things where it's like, why would you put me in that position?
For
like,
sure, dude.
You just show up to my house on post and then stash a weapon in my, like, well, you didn't tell anybody that you were bringing it. It was like, dude, shit gets wild. Like, that was
military friends will put you in the most retarded situations and act like they just asked you to borrow a cup of sugar. Like,
exactly.
It's not a big fucking deal, man.
That was
it's
my whole point of that. You're just
right.
like,
it almost is like an element to being in the military where you feel like untouchable, and like I can just do anything, and you don't even realize the consequences. Like, there's like such a heavy, especially when you're brand new. The first flight I was on when I was in Montana was probably one of the most tight flights I had until I got to like Germany.
That's like a platoon for you, right?
Yeah, this was the Air Force calls. Actually, well, yeah, or a company. I don't fucking whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's because whatever people I work with and posted with every day. And anyway, I'm not gonna say any names, but there was a cat on my flight, and his wife was a little promiscuous. And we used to have house parties at his house all the time. He would, so he's A1C, E3, right? Lives off base. He's, married. So like, that's where all the flight parties are because they're not on base,
Mm-hmm.
And like, he lived in like the sketchy part of town near the river. Well, he came down out of work one day and showed up at home, and his wife was getting finger banged by some dude. And so he just pulls his gun out and just like starts brandishing it at this dude, chases him out of the house. This guy gets in his truck. My buddy gets in his truck, and in Great Falls, there's, the river, Missouri River. There's a road that runs right along it, and it's got like this really, really steep embankment. It's super dangerous, especially during the winter. And he chases him off the road in his fucking car. Oh, and man. He pulls this guy out of the fucking truck, has him at gunpoint, the gun to the back of his fucking head. Eventually the police intervene. Bro, he got the gun to one of the other guys on my flight. Okay. And that kid threw the gun in the river, and the gun washed up downstream, and the police found it. Okay. And all of this, they like freely admitted to like the police. It was insane, dude. It's like, but so many stories like that where like, your friends are like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll get rid of the gun and then chuck it into the river. You know what I mean? Like, that's the solution when you're 19, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to throw your fucking Glock in the river. Yeah, that's it. We're good, dude. Party over.
I saw it on TV.
Yeah. No. That lasted for like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, the mighty Missouri washes it up like downstream, like probably like 100 feet. You know what I mean?
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
I guess for non-military people that hear this is like a, realization probably that the military is a reflection of society. Like, there's some real crazies. There's like some real psychos and stuff in the military, So.
Dude, I told this story to Chris one time. We were coming back from posting one day, and one of the 249 gunner we had on our flight who posted that day, he left his 249 at the like changeover location, and we're driving up. We're all in like a pickup, like 3 across the back, 3 across the front, and he just pulls his M9 out and points it at the back of the head of the driver. And he's like brand new. He's like been on flight for like 2 weeks, and he's like, turn the fucking truck around. He's like, I left my heavy. And we're all like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, all you had to do was say you left your gun. Like, if you get caught without your gun turning it in, we're all in trouble, dude. Like, we're all in trouble because you don't have any weapons discipline. Okay? Like, you could have just asked. Jesus. Like, you did not need to point the gun. And so, like, the Air Force carries the M9 with a round in the chamber, and it's always on fire. So, like, this is a loaded gun on fire at the back of this kid's head with a hollow point. you know, like over just, you could have asked. It just, yeah, you're right. Like full of degenerates at all times.
Oh man, I like that the Marine Corps is not as bad, I think, as the Army. When you come to like,
dude, I totally believe this. Having policed all branches, I totally agree with this. Yeah,
because part of it is because the Marine Corps, the Air Force is the hardest one to get into because they have the most restrictions. I could never get in the Air Force of having gotten arrested and stuff like that.
I didn't get into the Air Force either.
The only reason I got into the Marine Corps is because it was like during the plus up period, you know, and I had like, you should have seen the waiver stamps on my fucking like record book to let me in because of everything that all these getting arrested. But I got in. But the Marine Corps is the second hardest, and they require that you have that you graduate high school. Like you can't. I don't think you can get in with a GED. If you do, I think there's some exceptions. It has to be wavered. You know what I'm saying?
Got a pulse? Come on,
Jamie, can you look that one up?
And like everyone knows, like the Marine Corps, like they put it out there. They're like, we tried to be hard. We're not going to give you, you know, we're dicks. You know, we're going to be dicks to you. Right. We're going to treat you like shit. So it takes like a certain kind of mentality to like join the Marine Corps anyways. Like if you're just joining for benefits, why would you be like, yeah, I'm going to go through that? Like
the same why would people join cults, right?
I've told people, I'm like, listen, if you want to join the Marine Corps, that's cool, but you got to want it. Like don't do it because you feel pressure from someone else or you think it might be cool. Well, like you got to want it because if not, it's
pretty well known. Like if you ask the Army, it's like, why should I join the Army? They're like, oh, well, college. They'll start like telling you why. Air Force will be like, oh, like you have great after the military networking opportunities. The Navy's like, you can bang as many dudes as you want. Like the Marine Corps recruiter, he'll tell you like, look, you get the honor of wearing the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You get to be a United States Marine. Like, oh, okay.
And because they're smaller, they can't guarantee, like the Army can guarantee a specific job because they have so many people. They do have to fill it. So the Marine Corps, for the most part, there are some exceptions. They fill in like job fields. So, like, if I wanted to go back in and be a forward observer, I can't sign up to be an FO. I can't sign up to be a fire support man. I have to sign up for the artillery option and hope that out of the multiple artillery jobs, I get forward observer. You know, so that's one of those things. I mean, a recruiter can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain that's correct.
Well, I know based on one master guns that I talked to in the Marine Corps when I was deployed at one point, he was telling me too that the Marine Corps is so small that when you go to become a first sergeant in the Marine Corps, he's like, it's job immaterial. It doesn't matter. And this guy was an EOD operator at the time that I was working with. And he was telling me that like his first sergeant over his company, an EOD company, was like a former what we would call in the Army a 42 Alpha. He was a former like human resources specialist.
Oh, okay.
But he had been promoted that far to the point of like becoming an E9 in the Marine Corps. They were like, we're just going to send you here because they're so small. They didn't have any EOD.
The Air Force is that way too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, in the Army,
because it's like, an admin job.
Yeah, they typically keep you away from your AFSC. So if like you were security forces, it would be very rare for you to be a first sergeant at like a security forces squadron.
Exactly. Well, in the Marine Corps, the same thing. If you're an infantry first sergeant, you're most likely going to like a supply battalion or something like that because they want to spread that. They want to spread that institutional knowledge out. As part of it, that's part of it, but also the MOS isn't really that necessary because it's an administrative job. You're administratively like monitoring, hey, everyone's got height and weight, everyone has got their leave packages in. You know, you're doing that.
MOS for everybody out there is military occupational specialty, so it's like the job that you're trained into when you become.
Yeah, it's its own animal for sure. You're part of that commander triad, you know, with like the senior enlisted leader, the first sergeant, and the command, you know, like, it's a total job on its own. You're not operational doing anything with whatever your MOS
You're management
at
that point.
That's what you are, without a doubt,
You're the head admin guy.
You're the vice principal, dude. Like, you're the one that doles out all the punishment and deals with the bullshit.
That's really what it is. In their pockets and stuff.
Exactly. Get off the grass, you piece of shit.
Fucking hands out of your pockets. My last sergeant major hated me. Every time he'd come in the hallway, he'd see me standing there with my hands in my pockets. He'd be like, Kramer, get your fucking hands out of your pockets. And we were getting ready to go on a MEU on ship. Yeah. He's like, if I fucking catch you with your hands in your pockets again, you're doing watch the first 2 nights of our first port. Now,
what's a MEU?
Marine Expeditionary Unit. It's when you get on ship and you go float around and you do exercises. Generally, so out of Camp Pendleton, what you'll do is you'll leave here, probably go by Hawaii. Generally, you go by Hawaii. The recon guys will do a jump or something in Hawaii. If they're lucky, they'll get to do a dive at the Arizona. There's some guys that get to do that every once in a while. Yeah, every once in a while, that's an opportunity that some of those guys get to do. And that's the only divers that are allowed to go to the Arizona Memorial and do a dive are military divers and I think the National Park Service divers. Civilian divers can't go to it. And then, so usually you go to Hawaii, do some stuff there, and then you head out to whatever country you're going to first to do training. We went to Malaysia, did some work with those guys, and then usually you're in PACOM for a little bit for a scheduled amount of time, unless something crazy is happening. I imagine right now, I'm sure the ships are heading out and going straight to CENTCOM, probably because there's so much stuff going on over there right now. But generally, you go through PACOM, you do an exercise or two with some of the nations that are there, and then you head into CENTCOM, and you can do anything from doing exercises. We would go to like Kuwait and do exercises. We went to Saudi Arabia, we went to Djibouti, doing all these different exercises with different forces and stuff. And then every once in a while, they get called up to be a reaction force, either for, hey, this embassy's about to get overrun, so we're going to send in the guys to reinforce. My second MEU was right after I was actually on the deployment when Trump got elected the first time, and there was something happened. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what happened, but then we got a task force attached to us. The SEALs came on ship with the all the secret birds and all that shit, and then we went off to I think it was Yemen. It was either Yemen or Syria, but I'm pretty sure it was Yemen.
Oh, that was the kickoff of us pushing into Syria. So we Civil War, and all the dudes pushed in.
Well, we were after a specific person, and this is all unclassed, by the way. So I don't want to. If you feel uncomfortable with what I'm saying, you can look it up. The Macon Island, USS Macon Island, president. It was like the first thing after Trump got elected that he called in forces for, and one of the SEALs got killed on that one. And it was just so there's those kind of things happen. We supported that operation by using our aircraft, using the Ospreys. We had an Osprey crash, hard landing, not because it was shot down or anything. The pilot came in. I think the pilot came in too fast and just hit the ground. So we ended up having to bring in another aircraft and get those dudes out and blow up the Osprey. So that
I infilled Syria on an Osprey, and I'm gonna tell you right now, like those aircraft are so this is my experience, right? So it's like I com-aired from Fort Bragg through Vienna and then into Erbil, Iraq, and then from Erbil I took an Osprey into Syria to go push into that's what I was doing at the time, to go support a Special Forces ODA. And I climb on the back of this Osprey with my case and everything, and I put it on there, and I'm like, all right, I clip in, and aircraft like takes off, and like we do this like weird like 45 degree like, and like the aircraft just starts to take off, and I watch the dude clip his monkey tail in, and he goes over and he just like sits on the edge, like the back ramp, right, of the Osprey. And he's just got the cannon between his legs, and he's just sitting there with his legs dangling off the edge of the aircraft as we're like 45 degrees in the air, and the dude's just like, he's got the gun like right here, and he's just leaning over, and he's like looking at the ground, and I'm looking at the ground, and I'm like, this guy is fucking nuts. And he's just staring, and then all of a sudden, like, you can hear, because he's got his ears in, you can see he stands up, like puts his feet back up on the ramp, grabs the cannon, rotates the cannon 45 degrees, test fire, brrrr, like cool, puts the cannon back down, cool, goes over and sits down and just goes and clips himself back in. And he's just like, and then he goes to sleep. And I'm like, these guys are fucking nuts, dude. Like, I'm literally staring at the ground at the back of this aircraft. And then when we come in on the other side, because I couldn't sleep a wink for this like 20-minute flight, and he's just over there, and he's like,
business as usual, dude.
Yeah, and
I'm actually surprised he fell asleep. That's kind of crazy that a cruise.
It was wild. So we come in the other side, and he goes, and like stands back up and like comes over and like mans the fucking cannon, and then we come in on this base and like we come back to a hover and we start settling down, and the whole aircraft is vibrating like your mom's favorite toy, dude. It's just like everything is just fucking going.
I wouldn't know.
And we go to set down, and it's just the wicked sand wash is just everywhere.
Oh yeah. The rotor wash off those is the worst.
It's so bad. And we're sitting there, and then somebody like slaps me up the side of the head, and they're like, "This is your stop." And they're like pointing, and they're like, "This is you. Get off." Because I was a single flyer. That's exactly what it was. It was like, "Fuck off our aircraft. We're here for you. Get off." And I'm like, "Well, shit." And so like I stand up, and I'm like, I go to grab my case, and I'm looking like if anybody's going to help me, and the aircraft crew is just like looking at me like,
"Get your shit. We're trying to make mid-rats. Hurry up."
Right, yeah.
Get the fuck off.
Crew rest starts in 20 minutes, bitch.
So I grab my shit, and I'm like dragging it off the edge, and I put it on the ground, and then it's just like rotor wash, and just like everything is chaos. And then somebody comes out of the dust and grabs me by the shoulder, and they lean to my ear, and they're like, "Are you my name?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "All right." And they wave. And then next thing you know, the aircraft's like taking off, and I'm just like in the middle of like sand goes down.
Welcome
and
to the
I'm
party.
in the middle of this fob somewhere in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Syria. And they're like, "Hey, get your shit, throw it on the truck. Like, we're going." And I'm like, is that how we infill countries? Like, yeah, it's just that easy.
Yeah.
Like, let's go, boy.
What year was this?
This was 2018. Yeah, 2018. I'll just say.
So
that.
So on my second Mew, so actually the whole Trump thing of him that happened on my first Mew. Now that I'm thinking about it, on my second Mew, we had, maybe it was a second Mew. I don't remember. Anyways,
I know they all blend together.
Yeah, on the second Mew deployment I did, we also, one of my captains was sent ashore. What happens a lot of times is, hey, we're on ship. There's nothing going on ship. You're always trying to send guys ashore to do things, and guys are trying to get off ship. It's like a fucking prison.
Yeah.
So my captain got off and was in, I want to say Djibouti. No, he was in Kuwait. He was actually in Kuwait because he was with 51.5, I believe. And they were like completely even unaware, like the Mew was even there, or like what assets they had. They were trying to do contingency plans for things. And he's kind of like, hey, we have a LAR unit, right? The light armored reconnaissance guys. We have artillery, right? And he actually is the guy that made liaison with the command element, I think 51.5, and got the Marine artillery into Syria to start shooting for that battle of, what was it, by the dam. I'm trying to remember. It was in like 2016, 2017. It was like the huge battle.
That's just before me.
Yeah, it was like the huge battle to push out ISIS right there. And that movement in and bringing all those Marines in, that Marine battery and stuff like that, the artillery guys and the, everyone that came with them.
Topka Dam? Or the Battle of Topka Dam, I assume? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what comes up.
That really started the normal rotations of people through that area. Mm-hmm. So the Mew sucks. I hated being on the Mew because you're on ship. It's literally like a prison. It's like and I was at JTAC, so it's like, what am I doing here? I can't do anything.
It's not like you're like you're not like a guest. You're like a hitchhiker, right?
Dude,
because like
the Navy hates you.
The Navy crew is, because I've done one of my rotations I did as I was a TI, so I was inspecting a couple guys and like being an inspector for them, like kind of like watching them, right, as a special forces guy, and being like, all right, guys, like let's see how you conduct this exercise. But we had a team go out onto a Navy ship so that they could like work with the Navy and call in naval close air support and like all that jazz. And it's like the stuff that we got back from that exercise was just like, dude, being on a Navy ship when you're not part of the crew it's the hardest thing in the world, because the Navy crew is like, it's like a city at sea, and everybody has a job except you. You're a shitter and an eater, and they know that. And then it's like you're not a part of their daily operations. You're begging on their good graces to be a part of it, right? And it's just like it was terrible, the notes that we got back from it, and like how hard it is to work if you don't have a part of the mission that they're on, because it's like their daily operations is like a lot of people don't realize they literally depending on the ship, like they'll have a bunk, and like that bunk has like 3 people assigned to it. And it's like they're rolling in and out of that bunk.
That's more. I think that's more submarine life. The actual
submarine
ships.
And this one was an aircraft carrier that we were working with.
I was on an LHD, which is like a mini aircraft carrier. Like we carried the Harriers at the time, and now they carry the F-35s and stuff. And it's fucking miserable. Like you're stacked up. Like when you see the videos of like old school like racks on top of each other, it's exactly like that. 3 high. You're 3 high, and you have like you like slide into it. It's like you don't have a lot of room, and it's a coffin rack, so the rack lifts up, and that's where you keep your stuff. That's your storage. You have your bed, this little miniature bed, and it lifts up, and underneath that is where your stuff is, and that's it, and that's all you got. Yeah. And it's like it's completely miserable. I remember my first MEU, we had over 100 guys in one room. It was like 115 of us in one room, mostly 3 high. And then some of them, there was a couple guys that had to sleep on the 4th rack, which technically they weren't supposed to let guys do that for a long period of time. And we had 2 shitters and like 2 showers, and it was like 115 guys just in and out of there, and just
it smells like ass 24/7.
And when you get on ship, like you said, you're a rioter, man. Like when there's no deployment going on, when the LHD is just out training and they're doing their normal day-to-day, it's probably really nice for those guys because there's not a lot of people there. They're doing their job. They're running the ship. And then it's like, hey, we're going to do a workup for the deployment, or we're going to do the deployment. Here's 1,000 Marines on your ship now that weren't here yesterday. And now we're all waiting in line for chow. We're waiting in line to go to the ship store. We're waiting in line to use the gym.
Constantly.
Right.
Oh, it's
because
miserable,
they have a mobile like NEX on there, don't they?
Yeah, probably. It's a ship
and
store.
then it's like, and like, okay, that's what you were saying, right? So
yeah,
like,
you'll go and wait in line for that bitch for an
right.
over
So
an
I'm
hour.
sure every Marine that shows up is like, hey, how much, like what are we looking at for tobacco, like whatever? And it's like, I'm sure the Navy guys are like, oh shit, all the Marines are showing up, like, buy it up, dudes, and let's sell it back to them, right?
Hell yeah, $20 for a can of fucking Copenhagen.
I guarantee it.
Bro,
most of us get that shit sent to us. I don't think they sell smokes actually in the ship store. Only shit like junk food and like
Monsters.
Navy uniform items, nothing for the Marines, and like like protein powder and stuff like that.
Alcohol?
Some supplements and stuff. No way.
Crayons.
No,
there's no alcohol.
All alcohol. There is alcohol.
I guarantee
on
you,
the
there's
ship.
fucking alcohol in the damn
captain's
officer's mess.
Yeah.
Well, they keep pallets of beer on the ship. Actually, there's actually like they load pallets of beer, but they're in a special area that's locked off. Like you can't even get into it because if you're at sea for a certain amount of days, they do what's called like a steel picnic. And they bust out these grills and stuff out on the flight deck and everything, and they start grilling out, and everybody gets like 2 beers. You get like a beer ticket or something like that. And everybody gets like 2 beers. That's if you're at sea like 90 days or something like that. But man, 90 days at sea
every
is a
90
long
days
freaking time.
Damn.
Right.
Dude. So here's a question I have for you, brother. Like, did you ever do your crossing the Equator?
I actually I told him I wouldn't do it. I refused to do it.
Really?
Twice, actually.
Can you explain like what I'm alluding to and like give the people like what this is? Because we're none of us here are Navy people, so
yeah, it's
like
a
super Navy thing.
They call it the crossing the Equator ceremony. It's the there's an actual name for like if you're like a polywog or you're fucking what's the other word? I don't know. I can't remember. I refused to do it because. My first deployment, dude, I was pumped. I was like, I had done Iraq and I had done 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and I was like, oh, we're going on ship? Like, that's cool. Like, when I was a junior Marine, I heard all my like senior guys talking about going to like Australia, going to like, Spain, like all these places and like partying. And I'm like, man, that would be cool. So I'm like looking forward to it. And I'm the kind of guy too that would really like get into that whole ceremony. Like I was all about the like, the legacy and the,
pomp and circumstance of
the tradition, tradition of all that. And I was really into it. And then I got on ship, man, and the Navy fucking people just like did not like us and we didn't like them. You'd see guys shoulder check dudes in the P-ways and stuff like that. Sometimes I've seen it. I've seen The thing that really made me mad, man, was we had a crew chief get killed on the deployment. It was we were the first mission into Iraq for like OIR, like the other, like OIR had started, and we were sending, Inherent Resolve. We were sending in Ospreys to start fucking bringing people in, right?
Fucking hate those aircraft,
dude. Man, you want to talk about something sketchy? Take off in one on ship, because
I don't even want to.
You're floating around, you're on this ship, and it lifts off like 5 feet, and then when it takes off, it just like dips left real hard off the side of the ship and then goes. Well, one day they were doing one of these OIR missions, and freak circumstances happened. The aircraft was in some sort of maintenance mode, so it couldn't get full power. There was a known issue where there was no light that would illuminate on the dash, or whatever you want to call it, that showed that it was in this maintenance mode and it wasn't getting full power. They identified it at, I think, HMX-1 or something like that, and they disseminated that information out to all the squadrons to inform everyone, like, hey, be aware, we had a helicopter, we had one of the Ospreys try to take off in this maintenance mode and they couldn't get power. Make sure that this isn't an issue for your aircraft. All the squadrons got that information, and their safety officer briefs that information to everybody before, a flight.
Okay.
The safety officer was sick when they got that information, and that briefing didn't happen was going to be like the following day or something like that, because he was sick. And they took off in this maintenance mode, and immediately the aircraft was like dipping into the water. They were like fighting it to keep it out of the ocean. And it started to sink down into the water, and the pilots told the crew chiefs to ditch the aircraft. And the two crew chiefs jumped out the back, and one of them's inflation devices didn't work. And this isn't a normal training mission. These were missions into Iraq. This was actual combat mission. So he had his full body armor and all the, accoutrements fucking that he's wearing because of that. And so he was heavy. Yeah. Jumped off the back of the aircraft. His stuff didn't inflate. The other crew chief held on to him as long as he could and couldn't hold him and let him go. And the kid ended up drowning and dying. And we had a memorial. It was super messed up, right? They ended up, the pilots figured out something while they were flying and got the aircraft back onto the flight deck. But they had to go out and rescue the crew chiefs. And the one, we never even found his body. Corporal Spears is his name. And
rest in peace.
So anyways, we were doing a memorial ceremony for Corporal Spears on the flight deck. And it was the whole roll call and, the whole thing. And it's like super emotional, right? Yeah. And I remember being on the flight deck, standing there, and I already didn't like the Navy guys. A lot of them, don't get me wrong, there were guys that I did like that were on the ship, but a lot of them I did not like.
Yeah.
And we're doing this memorial ceremony, and off the back of the flight deck, there's a catwalk that you can hang out on. And there were two sailors back there fucking joking around. Like, we could hear them laughing and joking and stuff while we're doing this memorial ceremony. Dude, as soon as the ceremony ended, there was a fist fight. Like, a bunch of Marines ran back there and were like, whoa, and just it turned into like a fight. I was just like, but it was just like so disrespectful. Like, the whole time I felt disrespected on ship. It was like, you can't walk through here. You're not an officer. You're not a chief. I was an E6. I was a staff sergeant. So in every other world.
Yet you guys stood for his, like, this Navy guy's memorial.
It was a Marine Corps.
No, it was a Marine. It was a Marine.
Shit.
Yeah, it was one of our guys. It was one of our crew chiefs.
Yeah. Hands, dude. 100% hands.
So it was like, it was just like constant. It just felt like constant disrespect. I hated the ship life. I hated how if you weren't an E7 and above on ship, you were treated like shit. You were getting barely any food. You wait in line for everything. You just get treated like shit. If you're an E7 and above on ship, if you're an officer or you're like a E7 and above, you're living the good life. You go to the chief's mess. You go to the officer's mess. You get as much food as you want. You get you get special privileges. Like, we couldn't even get them to make us coffee all the time. Like, dude, the most basic thing,
what the fuck?
But anyway, so I felt disrespected the whole time. So when the crossing the Equator ceremony came around, I was like, dude, fuck them, dude. And this is after my second deployment to Afghanistan. Within a year, I was on ship. And I was in Afghanistan on an advisor team in Sangin. And I remember sleeping in the same fucking dirt hut with my, not even a hut like the Afghan huts, like a HESCO barrier like cave that we made with my officers. And we were all starving and we were all fucking miserable together. And whereas when you're on ship, they're living a completely different life. You can't even go in their areas. You have to give up a guy every month to either go work in the mess decks or the laundry or something like that. And I remember sending guys to work in the laundry, and they would have to do the officers' laundry, and they would be washing their linens for the officers'
fucking stained damn,
like their cloth napkins for their silverware and their mess decks and stuff. While you're getting like prison, all that shit. And while then when we go to do laundry, you got to wait in line for an hour with your laundry bag and just wait there to get into. And it was just all that shit was like, fuck this. So when it came around, I was like, fuck these guys, fuck their little ceremony. I was like, I'm not gonna let some piece of shit haze me that I don't respect. Like, I don't give a fuck, you know. And like I said, prior to that deployment, I was all about it. I would have been all about it. Like I would have. But I just felt so
disenchanted with the tradition at that point.
Yeah, I was like, you guys are so fucking like. If I was to recommend military service to anybody, I would always tell them the Navy's the worst one to go into. Like that's your bottom choice.
Yeah, you know, unless people say that, man.
Unless you're going in to be like a SEAL or a SWIC or something like that.
Navy aviation, maybe,
yeah, or maybe a pilot. Like if you're going to be a pilot. But like just to go in and be like a normal sailor, and again, no disrespect to the good sailors out there that like treat each other with respect, but I've never worked in a place where there were so many people that didn't want to help. You'd like ask a question like, "Hey, I need to get this fixed. What can I do?" And they're like, "That's not my job." There's a whole mentality of that's not my job. Of that. You know, and it was just
that's
like,
not good.
Yeah,
I can say without a doubt, man. When I was in the Air Force, I was at Malmstrom, which was the nuclear security field, and then Germany, and then at Travis Air Force Base. And immediately when I got to Travis, I noticed that what you're talking about, the not my job, I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it mentality was like super bad. And I had mentioned this to a couple of like, you know, my senior leaders, senior NCOs, and like, you know, of course, they're like getting fucking gaslit, like, what the, you know, I don't know what you're talking about, etc. They're part of the culture because they've been there for fucking, you know, 8 years because it's Alcatraz. And I'm standing at I'm standing at our commercial vehicle gate, and it's really, really busy. And our group chief Group E9 comes and visits us. Like he's having a conversation. He's like, "Where'd you come from?" I was like, "Oh, I was just in Germany." He's like, "Where were you at in Germany?" And I told him. He's like, "Okay, like down the road from me." He's like, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Does it just seem like nobody wants to do their job here?" And I was like, "Holy shit!" You know, like this, you know, this E9 is asking me, I'm an E6, like if I feel that way here. And I was like, "Yes." I was like, "It's fucking weird, man." I was like, I don't understand it. I was like, I'm here to do my job, right? And like, it just feels like everybody's here on a coffee break. Like I got that down, you know, like, and he's like, "Yeah, it's really weird." He's like, it's really turned me off to like being here already. And, you know, he's a group chief. So he's like plus 20 already, you know, ready to fucking punch the ticket. And he's like, "I was really excited to come here." And he goes, "Now I'm not excited to be here." He goes, "Because it's just like even the people in like the group staff office, which you think would be like sucking dick all the time because that's where they're at, like the command suite, is even they don't want to do their jobs." So he's just like super weird. And it does. It's just like a major turnoff when you feel like you're the only person who's trying to do anything and do your job, especially when, you know, you're not getting anywhere with people and they're dicks and they're rude and they don't want to do their fucking job. You need help or whatever. Yeah, man. I mean, I totally get that. Obviously not, you know, in your same situation, but like I can understand just that fucking bullshit mentality people have. It's sort of infectious, and I can imagine it being really infectious on a ship where you're very confined. You know, it's not like an air base where like, you know, everybody can leave and come back. Like the ship, like I'm sure like cultures, if they go bad on a ship, it probably happens really fast.
Yeah, well, the really shitty thing is when like the Marine officers or like the E7s and above start to get that attitude, you know, kind of like, "What are you doing? You know, what are you doing in here?" Like, because I was, like I said, I was an E6, I was a staff sergeant, and in the Marine Corps, when you're a staff sergeant, you're part of the staff NCOs and officers, and you go do everything together. I remember there was a area on the ship to smoke for the enlisted guys, for the E6 and below, and you're right next to the intake for the fucking engine. So you're out there and it's like,
loud as shit,
super loud. And I smoke cigars. I brought my humidor on the ship with me,
dude.
and I smoke cigars with some of the officers occasionally. And one of them invited me down to come down to their smoke pit, which was like super nice. It was like, I mean, nice. It was on the side of the ship. Nice. It was quiet. Yeah. I can look out the side and kind of look at the water and whatever. And I remember sitting there smoking cigars with these two officers, and this gunny comes over and he's like, "Hey man, there's a Navy chief over there, and he's pretty pissed that you're down here. So you're gonna have to leave, or they're gonna make a big deal about it." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "This is the E7 and above smoke pit." And I'm like, "Dude, fuck this, man. Like, are you serious right now?" And they like basically kicked me out of their little smoke pit. And, you know, and that's like the change. Like, you know, I was part of the command staff. Well, not that second deployment. I was part of the command staff, and I would get questioned walking through like officer country. Like, "What are you doing up here? What are you doing? What are you walking through here?" And I'm like, "I work up here." Like, "Who the fuck are you?" You know, like, I work for the fucking commanding officer of the Marine or of the Marine element, and we work under the Commodore. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, get the fuck out of here. It was all that shit just kind of like really killed my. I was, like I said, I was super excited. I was like, "Oh man, maybe it'll be a booze cruise." You know, you hear about these booze cruises where everybody's going to these different countries and just partying, and then occasionally go do an exercise. And no, dude, no way. We didn't get to do that. I got lucky. I remember I was so happy. I got off ship to do an exercise with like the Royal Marines and some other guys in Kuwait. And while I was off ship, the ship got orders to go do something. I think they were bombing Syria or some shit like that. They needed the aircraft for bombing. So the ship leaves, and we're in Kuwait, and it was kind of like, all right, figure it out. So it was awesome because we were off ship for like 2 or 3 months, and it was kind of like OFP, you know, we're on our own program. I walked over to the this is at Camp Buring, if you've ever been there. I walk over to the flight line, talk to the Apache guys, the Army Apache guys, and I'm like, "Hey man, I got a whole team of JTACs and forward observers here. Like, if you guys ever want to do close air support, let me know, and we'll you know, let's set something up." And they're like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." And it was like 2 to 3 times a week we're going out and shooting mortars, shooting HIMARS, doing close air support with Apaches. 60s are coming up from Bahrain to do close air support with us. We're just living the dream, dude. And then it was like, go back. Now we have to go back on ship. And it was like, actually we went to Saudi Arabia for a little bit, and then we went back on ship.
To prison.
Dude, exactly like that.
Not going back.
Now, the worst thing was like, not the worst thing, but the funny thing was like, we come back. We just got out of the desert where we're out working every day, like training, and we're out in the sun. We got nice tans and shit. You come on ship, everyone's pasty. Like, and you don't really notice it when you're on ship, but when you come off ship for a while, especially a few months, and you come back, dude, I'm like,
these fucking guys, highlighter people walking around, dude. What the fuck?
These guys were on the verge of getting a steel picnic because they had been at sea for so long. So it was like, bro, I can almost see your organs through your skin. You're so fucking pale. Like, what the fuck?
Can you guys talk to for just a little bit what it's like to be in the military? You just referenced it a little bit about the networking, right? So
it's huge.
A lot of people don't understand how terrible it is that the DoD doesn't even know how to talk to itself, like inside, right? Like, so we have like 4 or 5 branches depending on who you talk to, but it's like
Space Force.
We go on all these missions, and then you're in theater, like what you were talking about, or you're, you know, on a mission, and then you find a person from inside the DoD from another branch, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we've been here the whole time. Hey man, like, we could really use you for what we're doing right now, what our mission is." And the two didn't even know that they're trying to accomplish the same thing. Like, can you guys talk to that for a little bit? Because for instance, I was in an unnamed country in Asia where we were trying to conduct a training mission, and then come to find out there was an Air Force unit that was doing a training mission in the same country at the same time, and I just happened to run into these guys at a bar off duty hours, and they're like, "Wait, you're here too?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You're training with," and here's the weird thing, "You're training with this unit, this other unit from the United States?" "Yeah." What the hell, man? Like, we're trying to work with them to do X thing. And I was like, okay, I can literally give you their phone number right now. And they were like, what the fuck, man? And so it was literally like a chance meeting at a bar where two dudes were just like, yeah, we're trying to accomplish the same mission. Why do we not know that these people inside of the DOD are trying to do the same thing in the same country at the same time?
I wonder if that's just like an OPSEC barrier or something like that, like
could be, but I'm just bringing it up for conversation. Like,
I think that's where like PACOM is supposed to come into play, like those or like 51.5.
Yeah,
the joint
the
task
O's
force
probably know, they just don't say shit.
Yeah, it's on some slide that these elements are in the same country, but no one's telling them to liaison with each other. You know
what it probably is, dude? They find out that these different units are all there, and none of these fucking O's think past the like, oh yeah, the numerical units are here, and they don't think about like the capes that these units have and how they can intertwine with one another and then help make one another better.
Capabilities, guys.
Yeah. They just don't think that way, probably. Whereas, like, maybe. If you're the operational team sergeant and you see, like, oh, shit, there's a fucking special tactics squadron from the Air Force here. I should see if the PJs want to do some fucking training or if the CCTs want to do some CAS or whatever. You would think that way, but maybe some fucking dickhead captain is just like, oh, cool, STS is over there.
Oh, actually, right? You know what you reminded me of right there, Brandon? Mm-hmm. What you didn't do? Everything that we say tonight is completely and totally our opinions, right. And they do not represent any other entities outside of ourselves.
Get that cup chair brief out of the way, dude.
I have to. Everything that we're saying right now is completely and totally our opinions, and they do not represent any other entities other than ourselves.
The disclaimer will be in the show notes.
Some stories may or may not be true. No. Yeah, that's right. But what you're saying is correct. I mean, that's exactly why I thought it was a big deal that like my buddy, he was my officer, he was my fire support officer, Captain Burton, got the Marine Artillery into Syria to help the task force there during that battle against ISIS. It was like it started with an initial phone call. They called the ship and it was like, "Hey, this is Steve with the task force." And I remember answering the phone. I'm the one that answered the phone, and he was like, "Hey, you guys have artillery, right?" And we're like, "Yeah." Or I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you think that we could pull one tube behind a dump truck?" And I'm like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" I was like, "I'm not going to say no. Let me run it by my operations officer.
It's possible.
I think that'd be cool." And Burton did all the legwork and went from us not even being in that fight to having an entire Marine element there fighting. It is important. The best people are the people that understand that relationships mm-hmm. matter. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's kind of like, again, like we went into Kuwait and we were working with the Apache guys that were there on Camp Buring with us, but then we made contact with some like Navy 60s out of Bahrain, and they would fly up as well and do close air support and stuff.
No, that's pretty cool.
And then we would internally, what was cool was we were there. My Anglico team was there, and the recon team was there, and they have their own training, and we had our own training. They have some JTACs. I call them their JTACs. They're like one of 15 jobs they got to do. So it's like they go to TCP school, become a JTAC, and then don't do it forever. And so they will admit that they're not that great at it. So what we would do is we'd be like, "Hey man, we got Apaches coming in on Tuesday. You guys want to come out? Bring your JTACs out, and we'll get them some work. Bust a rust and stuff." And then what they would do is like, "Hey, we got this range that we're setting up. You guys can come out with us. We're going to do some CQB work, or we're going to go out and do some 240 shoots or something like that." So definitely, especially when you become like a team chief or like you get a little higher in rank, those relationships matter. And you should always be like fostering them, asking questions.
Well, like, and typically when you deploy, like especially if you're on like a small fob, like you have somebody on your team whose job it is specifically to like help build relationships. Like that person is like going over to the ODA side of camp and being like, "Hey, what's up, guys? What do you got going on? When can we get in with you?" Or whatever. And like somebody's supposed to help foster those communications. And like typically it is like it maybe like a CGO, maybe somebody like that, or like an E5, E6, but like, that just doesn't happen all the time. And especially if you're in like a bigger AOR, like what you were talking about, like the people that are going to get that info are probably like your 04s, 05s that aren't going to really talk to anybody, maybe an 06, and that info just doesn't trickle down because they're more concerned about the other stupid shit. And so then like you have these random incidents at a bar, Chris, where you're just like, oh shit, what's up, dog? And you're like, hey, yeah, fuck yeah, let's get this going, you know?
No,
like by the grace of God, here you are, you know?
No, it literally was by the grace of God, dude, too, because I was literally talking to the owner of the bar because I was trying to get a certain tattoo because I get tattoos from every country that I've been in. Like it's my right. And I was there and he was just like, oh shit, like, hey, by the way, did you know that there's other Americans outside of the bar right now? Because I've been hanging out with him for like 3 nights. And I was like, what? So I got there and I talked to him, and it's like, turns out they're Air Force dudes. And they were like, yeah, we're from unit whatever. And I was like, how long have you guys been here? And they were like, 3 weeks. And I'm like, I've been here for 2 weeks. How do we not know we're in the same country visiting the same? And by the way, it was you guys know about like American bars overseas, right? It was one of those bars. Like it is a special forces bar. Like our stickers are everywhere. It's our bar, right? And it's like they're Air Force guys hanging out at our bar. How did we not know that you guys were here? Right, and it just turned into that story. But
I guarantee somebody in your chain knew and just didn't.
Yeah, and they just didn't say. But to your point a little bit earlier, Brandon, like as far as like training is concerned, I would have the question for you guys, like, how do you facilitate, right? Like what? Let me pare this question down. Like, what have you guys? No, that's not a good way to ask it either. How do we make sure that we get this like cross organizational training that we need to do the jobs that we do, right, without violating, I guess,
OPSEC?
Yeah, right? Because it's like
operational security?
Right, because it's like at a certain point we know that our command is not giving us all the information, or may or may not. This is completely and totally my opinion as a guy in civilian clothes. May or may not
Thanks
be giving us.
Thanks for being here again, guest.
Thank you, as a
That's
guest.
right.
May or may not be giving us all the information that we may or may not need to go to places that we go. Like, how have you guys bridged that gap to make sure it's like, I need to know this stuff, or I need, like, these are the people I need to work with when I go there?
I mean, like, typically, I'll say this, right? Like, even on the little shithole fob that I was on in Kenya back when it was still a data mass location at Camp Simba, there was a Persco group there, like personnel. And, like, they have accountability of everybody who's there. I mean, like, I guess you could stop and just be like, stop by, like, the Persco hut and be like, who the fuck is on camp, you know? And then find out. Like, it doesn't necessarily have, and you're right, I can see maybe where you're going, Justin.
Like, are you a spy?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, like if
you're a list of everyone that's here.
Yeah. Well, if you're like if you're there under like the I just got here trying to facilitate training, like it's already a tracked sort of thing, right? But see where you immediately went to is what I was just saying is OPSEC. And it's like this might just be one of these like casualties of the fog of war where it's like coincidentally you run into people that you should do training with, but like maybe you're not going to get handed a manifest before you're in country and be like, oh, hey, these Marine Raiders are here. And so are these Air Force, special ops guys. And then, right. Because like, what if you lose that sheet of paper, or what if you're a dumbass who tells your wife and she puts it on the spouse's page and she's like, my husband's there with these Marine Raiders and they're in what, like, and then now all of a sudden, right. Like, I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing that like I don't know, my brain goes to. Like overcoming that, I guess, would just be like having the foresight to just strike up a conversation with people. I guess
you have to do your research before going overseas, and that just has to do with like
get on Sipper and read what's going on in the area, who's reporting,
and then reach out to them and send emails and just figure out like who's doing what and where with what information you have.
My guys are so used to it because when I was with Anglo Coast specifically, Anglico, so for those that don't know what that is, it's Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company, and that's a Marine Corps unit that basically doesn't work with Marine Corps units. Like almost their whole point is, the whole point of Anglico is to be the liaison element. Let's say we have a foreign element. Big thing in Afghanistan was the Georgian liaison teams. You have these Georgian soldiers out there, and there is Marine Corps fire support in the area, artillery, aircraft, whatever. Well, the Georgians don't have the know-how or the radios to talk to those guys. So what happens is an Anglico team gets attached to them, and now they're the fire support guys. And you show up, and you're working with anywhere from like your average Georgian soldier to special operations guys.
Plug and play asset is what you're talking
exactly. About. That's our whole gig, was to liaison with people. So like I went out to Fort Polk for JRTC with the 501st, and it was us and the 501st and a British, I don't know if it was 148 battery guys. It was a British unit, a British Army unit was there too. And we got I personally was attached to the British guys. And I was their forward observer. I was their JTAC. And that was kind of our thing. So it was always natural for us to kind of show up and be like, hey, what can we do here? Hey, who are you? Let's work together. What can I – because we want to get missions too. Like if you don't – I had a sergeant major that would always say, like, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. If you're there and no one knows you're there, then who's going to use you? So you got to let people know, like, hey, we're here. Here's the capabilities that we have. We bring, this 4-man team comes with multiple radios, their own vehicle, their own certifications, 2 JTACs, a forward observer, a radio operator, and you just you lay that package out. And people are like, oh, well, cool, let's do that. Let's bring those guys in. One really cool thing that I thought when we were at JRTC with the 501st, one of my comm chief, while we were there, we're like, hey, we want to shoot we want to make a field expedient antenna. One of his missions was to make a field expedient antenna and shoot a comm check back to our headquarters at Camp Pendleton from Fort Polk in Louisiana. And we told the Army guys, we're like, hey, tomorrow we're gonna take a couple hours and our comm chief is gonna do this thing. We're gonna work on that. And they're like, whoa, you can do that? They're like, what? Can we send guys down? Or no, that's not what happened. We were setting up the antenna. I remember we were setting
Everything
up the antenna.
Everything I just said is not the way it was.
We were setting up the antenna, and the Army guys came by, and they're like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, we're making a HF antenna to shoot a comm check back to Camp Pendleton in California. They're like, what? That's when they did the what? You didn't do that? Right. And so we're like, hey, well, if you got guys that are interested in this, my comm chief, my comm chief can teach you guys how to do this field expedient antenna. Come by tomorrow. And I remember the next day, like 40 soldiers showed up. They had all these soldiers show up, and my comm chief, who's a sergeant, E5, is like, all right, let's do this, and like showing like this is the here's wavelength theory and blah blah blah, and they're all sitting there taking notes, and I'm like, this is what it's all about, man. We're doing it right here.
Wavelength theory, dude.
Wavelength theory.
We're gonna philosophically teach you how to do comms.
We're gonna do slanted V's. We're gonna dipoles.
How many of you guys are really good with trig? Nobody? Cool. Get your pads out, right?
It was just I thought it was super cool because he was a sergeant. It was a really cool confidence boost for him because I was like, dude, you guys don't understand how good you're becoming at comm. That's like one of our huge things. When we're out by ourselves, like we're the only like 5 Marines attached to whoever, foreign element, special operations, whatever. You can't show up and know what the fuck you have to know what you're doing. Like you can't show up and be like, oh, I can't load a radio, I can't program, So we beat it into our comm guys that they have to be good. We'd send them to Mountain Comm or stuff like that, these different schools, and so they were really good. And some of them don't realize how good they are compared to like regular radio operators.
Probably because they don't use it as often as they.
I'm really glad that you said that because one of the things that we beat into dudes that are special operators are the reason that you get to do the cool guy things. You don't actually so there's like kind of a misconception about special operators, and that's like, oh, they get to like break all the rules because they're cool guys, right?
They get to put their hands in their
pockets. They can do whatever they want.
That's right.
Right. They can put their hands in their put their hands in their pockets and they get to grow beards. It's like no. Like the reason you get to be a special operator is because you get to prove every single day that you're a master of the basics. And if you can master the basics and do the basics under extreme conditions, then you get to, like, it's the idea of I memorized the law so that I can know how and when to break it.
Yeah.
Right? If I know the law 100% in and out, then I know when and where I can break it.
Yeah.
Because I know it 100%, right? And that is what it is to be an operator. You're not some cool guy, right? Like, we are, like, I'm a medic, right? Like, I'm a special operations medic. I memorized and I know and I can spout off the law of how to do medicine to the standard of the way the military says I should do it, to the point where if or when there comes a point where I have to go outside of the law, but I understand the basics, I can do that because I understand what I'm doing, right? Does that make sense? Like, if you're a communications guy, you understand how to set up radios, you understand wave theory, you understand all that, and you can do it to the point where, okay, now you're on a mountain 10,000 feet in the sky and we can't get comms. I need you to be able to go outside of the law and figure out how, like, I need comms. So that's it.
With what you're saying, I looked up a quote from, I know this is like totally random, but like it made me think of Musashi, the Book of Five Rings. And there's a quote, but I didn't want to misquote it. It says, it's when you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. And it's kind of like what you're talking about. Like, you know how to break the law. You don't need to, you're not so colored in the lines. You know and understand it in and out, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. So, like, people think that, like, special operators are these like we're dyed in the wool soldiers. Like, they I don't know, they pulled us out of test tubes somewhere. And it's like, no. That, right? It's like we study the book and then we become an expert in how to become an expert at things, so that when we have to do a thing and it's outside of the parameters of where anybody else can figure out how to do it, we're so good at doing it in the basic point that it's like, now I can figure out how to do it here where the basics don't matter.
So you're saying if I can trust you to do the little things right, that I can trust you to do the big things right? Is that what you're saying?
The brilliance in the basics.
Right.
That's all it is to be an operator, and that's where the military gets these guys, because it's like they go and it's like, can I make you tired and 3 days starved and you can still do the thing, right? Like, what's the very basic thing? You can set up security and you can do ambush, raid, freaking like.
Whatever your job is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Can you
under
do
all
it?
Conditions, under all climates. Yeah.
And then those guys, they go, okay, now I'm going to teach you how to do it to the next level. And that's all it is. Like, that's where they find these guys, right?
And you also have the convenience in special operations of being in a unit where they allow you to think outside the box. You know what I'm saying?
But you don't.
Anglico was good like that. Like, they gave us a lot of leeway.
But you don't get the ability to think outside the box until you've proved
for sure
that you can do it inside the box
exactly
1,000 times correctly, and you're fucking tired and starved.
That's how.
And then they're like, okay, all right, now here you go. Here's more. Right?
In my world, like, as a JTAC and as an evaluator, we would have guys that would come right out of TACP school. When you come out of TACP, which is Tactical Air Control Party School, and that's where you get certified as a JTAC. And once you get certified, then you come back in the Marine Corps, you come back to your unit, and then the JTAC evaluators in your units and the JTAC instructors in your units, you go out to the field with them, and you have to get follow-on controls. You have to get, like, a certain amount of live controls, fixed wing, bombing, live ordnance, artillery, combined arms, all that. And then once you've done all those things with someone supervising you, then you can start, you get what we call designated. And then you can start going out on your own and controlling aircraft on your own, drop bombs on your own. And one of the things that we did was, like, as I was getting out my last, like, 4 or 5 years, tablets started becoming, like, a bigger thing. I was like one of the first groups that got to take, it was called at the time PFIV, and then it became Kill Switch, and then now they use a different program that the Air Force uses as well. And it's a tablet where you can load all the map data. We had GRGs on it. We had ordnance like effect rings on it.
Those are,
and it was
ground reference guides, by the way, guys.
Yeah, yeah. And think of it like if you're looking at a Google Earth map and it's all squared out, and then every compound is given a number. You know, I could tell an aircraft like, hey, I need you to take a look at, you know, Sector 1 Bravo Compound 15, and they could snap right to it rather than doing a long talk on to get them in place. Well, what we did with new JTACs was you didn't get to use a tablet. Until you were designated, you were doing everything with a map and compass and binos. You were doing it that way with a bust out the protractor and do all that, because
you're not gonna
the tablet's going to die, it's going to break, you know.
Yeah,
well, you definitely have to show the basics.
You got to prove that you can do the thing with the thing before we give you like
the cool high tech stuff.
The iPhone,
that's like,
right?
Even when I was even before I was a JTAC, when I was just a forward observer, you know, we wouldn't let new guys use a laser rangefinder. It was like, hey, dude, you're coming out here, again, map, compass, binos, and you're doing range estimations based off of what you see. You're not using the laser range. We're going to back you up. Obviously, I'm not going to let you shoot something out of the box or something like that.
Right.
You know, but you're not using that stuff because you got to use the basic tools. You know what I'm saying? You got to learn how to do range estimation. You need to learn how to do the plotting on the map and all these things, because it becomes important. In the Marine Corps, it's huge. Combined arms is huge. So everything is always, we're always looking for, like, what's the gun target line? Where's the aircraft coming in? Where are the people at? You know, where's our guys at? Where's their guys at? It's like a whole, you have to be aware of all these things. And if you can't do it with your basic tools, then we're not going to give you some of the other stuff that makes it easier. Because if I've been in, like, Afghanistan, and my laser rangefinder quit working. And I was like, well, all right, time to...
Listen, it's literally the stupid argument your high school math teacher gave you about you're not going to always have a calculator, so you need to know how to multiply manually. It's literally it, you know?
Yeah, but
I'm doing the same thing with my kid right now.
Yeah.
He's been telling me we're working on fractions right now, and he goes, Dad, you keep looking at these math problems and you use your iPhone, and I'm like, yeah, but it's because I'm checking you. I learned how to do this with a pencil. You have to do it too before you get the iPhone.
So it says, like you said, those brilliance in the basics become really good. For Marine forward observers, the standard was always we have to come out to the OP, and I'm going to point out a target for you. I'm like, that's your target. You have 2 minutes to identify that target's location within 200 meters using a map, compass, binos, and a protractor. That's all you get. You know, and that was the standard. And it was like, once you can meet that standard over and over again, and then generally, I was at 10th Marines in North Carolina. We used to do 2 training exercises a year, and each one of those was a month long. It'd be March.
Bragg.
Yeah, we'd go to Bragg, and we call it Braggistan, you know, and you'd show up, and we'd shoot artillery for a month and piss off the locals, and no one liked it when we were there because we have a whole regiment out there shooting artillery for a month straight.
You guys rolled me out, I bet, a few times.
The wives are complaining on the spouse's page. Can you tell the artillery guys to turn it down?
Literally, people out in town would call the cops and say an artillery
needs to nap.
They've actually called the cops before and said an artillery round landed in their yard because they wanted people to stop shooting artillery.
Are you
they made the whole this is a civilian off base.
I used to live
falsify a police report. Artillery. Yeah.
How we called it Rolling Thunder.
Right. Yeah.
So after a month of that, after a month straight of being in the field, living in field conditions, doing your FO job, then when you came back from that, it was like, okay, now we trust you. Or we don't. You know, or we found out you're not good, and we're going to send you off to the estuary or something to go work on shit.
Yeah. So you came in 06, right?
Yeah, 2006.
Yeah, that's like relatively early GWOT. When was your first deployment? Like, was it? You said you did 1 Iraq, 2 Afghanistan. Did you go to Iraq first, or when was
Iraq first? Yeah.
Okay. So did you deploy there as a mechanic, or did you deploy there as an FO?
Oh,
I think I lost you guys for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I asked if you deployed there as a mechanic or an FO.
Mechanic.
Okay.
And that's when I did. That was when. So I deployed. My first deployment was in 2009. I came in 2006. I got sent to maintenance battalion. Dude, I was so miserable. So when I said I came in open contract, I wanted to be infantry. I found out I'm not infantry. When I leave boot camp, they're like, hey, man, you're going to be a geographic intelligence specialist. They're like, all the open contract people come down here. We're going to tell you what your job is. You're going to be a geographic intelligence specialist. I'm like, what the fuck is that? I look it up, and I'm like, well, that's not infantry, but I'll get a TS clearance, and, it could be worse. I'm not a cook, And I go home for my post boot camp leave, and I come back for MCT. So the Marine Corps.
Hold on, how cool were you when you went home? You're like, I just graduated boot.
Oh yeah,
yeah, of course. all drinks,
raw. Walk around like
raw,
yeah, definitely. Sorry. I think I even tried to get in a fight with somebody. I think it was like I was so drunk I couldn't even swing. It was just that's the Marine thing. I also got married on boot leave. I was that guy.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Are you still married?
No.
Dang it.
No. It made it. Hey, I will say it lasted 12 years. It lasted a while, but 5 deployments, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So you in the Marine Corps, you go to boot camp, and then you go to MCT, which is the Marine Combat Training, which is 30 days of like machine guns and, all those things for everybody. Like everybody has to learn how to shoot. Everybody has to learn how to break down machine guns.
Actually, I'm going to interdict right here. I wish the Army did that. I wish the Army had a basic infantry training for everybody before they go to their whatever their job training is. You guys have, because every Marine is a rifleman, right? Is like the whole thing. Yeah. I wish the Army did that, and they don't. But
is that true,
don't tell an infantryman that.
Right.
Well, but I do, because it's like I know guys that have been in places in Afghanistan and Iraq, like when deployment actually kicks off and it's like now we're in a war, which we're all GWOT guys here, right? And then these guys show up over there and they're like trying to figure out how to fucking man a 249 or a 240, and it's like they don't know how to do it. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm a cook.
I want the barrel come off of this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you're like, well, and my story for this is I was one of those guys. I came out of Intel at first, and I went to Ranger School, and my first time at Ranger School, like my very first graded assignment was I was the 249 gunner, and I went out there and nobody had ever showed me how, like, I didn't see it when I was in basic training, and I went through basic training in 2011, and I didn't know how to work the 249. So I'm like sitting there and I'm like loading rounds and trying to like work the thing, and it's like blop, and it's like the rounds.
Did you ask anybody, or was it one of those moments where you're like, I can't ask, I'm too far
right.
away?
I did.
So, hey, it needs a barrel change. He's like, it won't. I put it forward, but the barrel won't come off.
So I actually did, and I asked a guy before we went out of the patrol, and he looks at me and he goes, ha ha ha, and he just walked away. And I was like, okay, well, and so I'm trying to work it, and this guy runs over to me,
just go cycling all day.
We're getting hit, and he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm like, I can't, like, I keep loading the rounds, and he looks at me, and he goes, you dumbass, brass to the grass. And he grabs my belt and flips it over and loads it, and I was like, oh, you know what? I asked somebody before we went on this patrol, and I'm like, if you would have told me then, I would know now, but now I don't, and now I look like an idiot, right? Like, it's just this whole thing. Where
was it an instructor or another student?
No, it was another student, right?
Oh, they're like, fuck this guy. You're getting recycled.
100%.
Get out of here, lame.
100%, right? Like, get out of here. What are you, fucking leg? Oh, yeah, a damn leg, too, on top of all this, right? So, but I took that lesson and I pulled it forward because obviously I made it into Special Forces, and I'm like, I remembered that moment where I was like, hey, would somebody teach me this?
Please,
and nobody would give like 30 seconds to me. And
at least you asked. A lot of guys won't even ask. They're like, oh, right. They don't want to seem incompetent.
And then
it's like, then you end up looking like an asshole.
Right. And I've been on 2 combat deployments and several other like overseas trips. Right. And like, I don't ever, based on my experience, I don't ever just assume that a dude knows how to do what I'm asking him to do. Right. So as a medic, I'll be like, hey, this is what I need from you. do you know how to apply a tourniquet? Like, let me just ask, right? And it's like, please tell me. And if they look at me and it's like, even if there's just a moment of like, okay, you know what? Let me just take like two minutes, and I'll show you, right? Like, because I just want to know that you know how to do this one thing, right? If you're gonna be the guy, I need to know that you know how to do the thing I'm asking you to do, which somebody didn't give to me back in the day, right? So that's why I interjected in this moment.
It's a good base. It's a good base of information for all Marines. It's a good base of information for all Marines. I will say, like, they rush through a lot of it. It's almost like here's a 240. You spend one day on it. You learn how to you learn how to break it down, put it back together, and then you go out to the range and everybody gets like a belt of ammo or something like that. Wow. And that's like but that's better than nothing. So that at least the next time you have a 240 there, you're like, oh, at least, brass to the grass. I learned the ditty, or butter jam, when you're shooting and stuff like that. But then when you get to the end of MCT, then they tell you what your MOS is and where your MOS school is. And they're like, Kramer, so-and-so, 3521, Camp Johnson. I'm like, what the fuck is a 3521? Because I thought I was going to be an intelligence guy. And they're like, motor T mechanic. And I'm like, God damn it. I was so fucking mad. I was so mad. And then I get through motor T school, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll get sent to like a cool unit, and I'll still get to do some cool shit. And they're like, Kramer, so-and-so, 2nd Maintenance Battalion, 2nd MLG. That's the worst fucking unit in the entire Marine Corps. Like, the staff sergeant laughed and was like, that's the worst unit in the Marine Corps. And I was like, fuck. Great. And it was basically, it was a super shitty unit. It was basically like, come in at 5, PT, you're in coveralls by 7:30, and you're turning wrenches until 1700. You get an hour for lunch. That includes cleaning all the grease off yourself and trying to go get food in that time. And during that period, at Maintenance Battalion, they don't ever really deploy as an entire unit. Like when there were deployments going to Iraq, they'd be like, hey, we're creating a new unit to go out to Iraq. We need 25 guys. Okay, we're pulling these 25 mechanics. Hey, 15 of you are going to be mechanics. The other 10, you guys are going over with the MPs, and you're going to do convoy security. So you're going to go learn the machine guns and all that stuff and do all that kind of thing. That happened one time while I was there. They pulled me for a deployment, but they also had me, I got taken off of it because they had me working on it was a test program called the Expeditionary Fire Support System. It's like a little Jeep looking thing, and it was a 120 millimeter mortar that the Jeep towed behind it and all this stuff. And so I did that, and which it was like a cool thing that I got. It was like the coolest thing I got to do while I was a mechanic, because I got to go to like Alaska. I got to go to like Bridgeport. I got to go all these places, go to the field. Like when you're in Maintenance Battalion, you don't go to the field. You're there to turn wrenches, replace, Humvee motors and stuff like that. And so I'm out on this test team testing these brand new vehicles nobody's ever done. So we're doing fabricating and stuff. And the infantry guys that were there were all TAD, and they were all guys that were at the end of their contract. So this is like the last thing, just kind of kick them over there until they get out. And all these guys had come back from like Ramadi and stuff, and they'd all done their job for years. So when we would go to the range to shoot like the 50 cal and stuff, they're like, Kramer, you've never shot a machine gun, other than MCT. I'm like, no. They're like, get up here, dude. Here's just handing me cans of ammo. I got up there on the right-hand side, you can see by the lamp, that's the base of the 120 millimeter mortar. That's the tail fin for the 120 millimeter mortar. The first time the Marine Corps shot it, that's what that tail fin's from.
Nice.
So I got to do that, and they asked me, like, hey, do you want to go on this deployment, or do you want to stay on this test team? And I was like, I want to go on the deployment. And they're like, well, that's cool, but you're already on the test team. So I'm like, why'd you even ask me? I know, right? They were hoping I would like say it myself, so they didn't have to give me the bad news.
Because it's fun.
Right. Yeah.
So I did that I did two things. I did 2 like rounds of doing that test team, and then I deployed to Iraq in 2009 to TQ as a mechanic, and it was just exactly what you would think of a mechanic. I turned wrenches all day. Like, I didn't do anything cool. I was in a motor pool. If you've ever been to TQ, Al Taqaddum Air Base, I was by the flight line. I would sit there. I mean, yeah, that was it. And then at the 2/3 of the way through that deployment was when my re-enlistment time was coming up. And I was like, one of my buddies came up and was like, I think I'm going to lap move to be a forward observer. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be fucking cool. So I like went and put in my package. He ended up not getting it, and I got it.
Oh, and there was like the idea.
And there was, well, damn. He reminded me of the idea because I remember when I was talking to my recruiter, when he initially told me, hey, I might not be able to get infantry for you. This was like before the whole shenanigans. I was like, well, forward observer would be cool. So he reminded me. I was like, oh, yeah, that would be a cool job. And there was actually a bonus attached to it, too. And we were in country, so I got the bonus tax-free. We didn't talk for a while after that. It was kind of a bummer because he was super butthurt. Because he was always like that high PFT, high, like...
Right.
Dude,
my run time is better than yours.
There's always that guy that just gets effed over.
His GT score, what happened was he fucked off on taking his ASVAB when he was in high school. And his GT score was lower than it should have been. He ended up retaking it and became a counterintelligence guy, but he got screwed on that one. But yeah, so I lap moved there, and then when I came back from Iraq, I got sent to 10th Marines, which is the artillery unit on the East Coast. I was at 2nd Battalion, 10th Marines, and went to MOS school, worked there, learning the job, and becoming a fires chief is what we call it. And then I got attached to 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, to go into Afghanistan for their Marja deployment in 2011. And
what was that like?
I mean, I was bummed because usually, like, if you're a lap mover, they normally make you a scout, and you go out and you're a sergeant probably, or maybe a senior corporal. But they're going to have you out doing the PFC's job. You're going to be out being a forward observer with a line company.
Can I back you up just a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
For the guys that don't know, staff sergeant, corporal in the Marines, can you tell them what that means?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't know.
So we call junior Marines, that's your private, PFC, and Lance Corporal. Private first class and Lance Corporal. Right. E1 through E3. E4 and E5 are your NCOs, a corporal and your sergeant. Corporal, I know in the Army it's different. You can there's some people get corporal, some people become specialists. In the Marine Corps, they're all corporals, and it's like that's your first time that you basically become like a working supervisor. If you're in the infantry and you're a corporal, you're probably a squad leader. Or excuse me, not a squad leader. You're probably a fire team leader, maybe a squad leader, depending on the manning. But it's like you at that point you should be pretty well versed in your MOS, and you're teaching the new guys.
Like, you have how many people under you at those levels?
Well, for me, so the way it worked in liaison for the fire support guys, we're always attachments. We attach to, like I said, we put together a team, and then we attached to 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines. I brought over what happens. Each company, you have 3 companies, 3 line companies. In each company, we bring over a lieutenant, a junior, or a lieutenant, a radio operator, and a forward observer, a 0861 enlisted guy. So 3 guys on each company, so there's 9. And then the headquarters element has the fire support officer, me, 11, and then I have 2 other 0861s and radio operators underneath me, so 4 more guys. So it's like 15 to 17 guys. And I was a sergeant at the time, which was not abnormal, but also normally they try to have a staff sergeant do that job. I got lucky and was like underneath one of the best fire supporters probably in the Marine Corps at the time, Gunny Klein, and he just taught me so much stuff that they're like, hey, we're not going to send you to be a scout. You're going to go and be the team chief. And I was like, oh, fuck, but it was, it was what I wanted. Like, I was bummed because I didn't get to go out on patrols and stuff as much as I'd like. Only a handful of times. I was in the command center the whole time. But I did all the call for fire. I did high march strikes on guys. I did the first time, my very first fire mission, when I was in country. We were sitting there. We're at Fob Marja. I'm on my computer, and I'm doing some stuff on the maps or something like that. And someone's like, hey, is that an IED in placer? And I look up, and it's kind of like what you see in the movies, just not as glamorous for, you guys know, as in a command center. There's big screen TVs, but it's not all crazy TV, digital looking. It's just like it's like
Tony
a
Stark moving around the shit. Yeah,
for sure. So we're watching, and there's like we have like a Predator or something up, and we get eyes on like an IED in placer, and we're like, oh shit, there's an IED in placer. And this is like at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so there's not really a lot of air going on right now. We don't have air on station or anything. And immediately I go to start doing a fire mission. And with HIMARS, it's all digital. You send it over like a digital chat and stuff like that normally. Well, when I got ready to do it,
it's called Merc Chat, right? It
exactly, Merc Chat. Yep. Yeah, but when I get ready to start pulling the information and sending up the fire mission, all the data went down, the network went down, and I'm like, oh fuck. And what happened was when I first got there, the guy I took over from was like, hey man, here's this radio. It's called a netted iridium. And I keep it programmed. I keep batteries in it. And here's the net for the firing battery. And here's the net for the command element to do the approval. And I was like, all right, cool. He's like, yeah, I just do like 1 or 2 radio checks a day. And I just keep that there just in case. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll just keep doing that. Well, when that shit went down, I grabbed that radio and I'm like, this is me. Adjust fire, grid 1, 2, 3. I'm doing like an actual like, and I'm shaking too. Cause this is real life. And I'm watching 3 or 4 guys put in an IED. And I'm like, fuck. And, yeah, I sent up that first fire mission. OPSO comes in, checks it out. He's like, hey, it's approved. And I'm like, approved, fire target number, whatever. And they shoot, and it's just like, boom, the screen whites out, and fucking comes back in to focus, and you see one dude like stumbling around. There's guys on the ground, and my OPSO was like, can you do that again? I'm like, yeah. Repeat, target number 1, 2, 3.
Right. Hold on. What's the one thing they tell us never to say on the radio?
Yeah, because of that.
You're not supposed to say repeat, but you hit repeat, right?
This was the time. It was like repeat, target number 1, 2, 3.
You're allowed to say that because it's supposed to say again because of you guys.
Because the artillery.
Repeat.
Artillery guys are the most anal guys about communication. If you talk to like, I don't know if I imagine it's like that in the Army as well, but in the Marine Corps, it's if you don't say exactly how you're supposed to say something, someone's going to correct you. Someone's going to be like, no, that's not.
Somebody's going to check radio on you, like check.
What do you say? What are you doing? Yeah.
But that should have been the one time if somebody said, can you do that again? You should have been able to go repeat fire mission, right?
Yeah, it was correct? You just get on of like, hey, this is me, repeat target number Alpha Bravo 1, 2, 3, 4.
Because I am not a like I've never had training in that, but I know for a fact in speaking over the radio, the one thing you're never supposed to say is repeat. It is I say again.
Yeah.
Because it's an open net, like a lot of the nets that we speak on.
Last.
You don't want to actually shoot when they're not. There's no plans for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you were able to actually say that, like actually send.
Yeah, and we were watching, and what happened was I told him to repeat, and I'm watching the screen, and one of the guys gets up and he tries to pick his buddy up and fire him and carry him, and then he stumbles over, and he kind of like gets this dude, and he starts like stumbling out of the target area, and I'm like, oh fuck, because it takes like a minute for the HIMARS rocket to launch and get over there, and I'm like, damn it, he's starting to walk away from the target area, and then the second round just hit. Whited out the screen, and then came to, and they were gone. There was nothing.
Like a 10 by 10 meter grid. So
I was like, "Fuck yeah!" I was all pumped, dude. And I turned around, and all of a sudden, I like looked in the command center. It was like everybody was there watching. Anytime there's a strike going on, it's like someone hits a little secret button underneath their desk. Everybody shows up. They want to watch the strike. It's like, but I was like, "Whoo, that was cool." It was crazy. It was, I wanted to be a forward observer, so I was like, but the adrenaline rush, it was like crazy.
Well, I was just
getting to the command center completely safe. Like,
I was just going to say, like, you remember that super vividly. Like, you had to remember when you were finally at JTAC, like calling in close air support the first time, right? Like, how did that compare?
Man, I mean, in country, I didn't even get to drop in country because of our. When I went as a JTAC on a Afghan National Army advisor team. So we were in somebody else's AO. And the battalion commander there just wouldn't give approval. So what we ended up doing was we just shot a ton of – I was spotting Afghan mortars. Like, hey, if the Americans aren't going to give us fire support, we got guys over here. Like, fucking, hey, dude, let's get the mortar set up. We're going to start shooting 82s. And so that's – I didn't get to do it in country. But, yeah, dropping – just even doing my first, like, fire or actual, like, close air support mission was, like – it's funny you look back at it because they're like, hey, here's your target. This is what you got to do. You have 30 minutes till air check's on. It's like, oh, fuck. You know, like start plotting on my map, and I'm like, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. Well, after you've done it a lot, like when I became an evaluator, you could literally walk up to me and be like, hey, there's your target as the aircraft is starting to check in, and I could do it then. You know, it was like, it was funny at the time that how much pressure I felt, you know, knowing even having that much time. But I don't know. Yeah, what I remember the most is when I fucked up. You know, the times that you don't say something right on the radio. No doubt. I remember one time I was a new JTAC. I was out. I had 2 F-18s on station, and we were trying to do a gun run at a range BT-11, I believe, in North Carolina. And I'm like, hey, are you familiar with the area? And they were like, no. And I'm like, oh fuck, these are like new pilots, because this is like every pilot on the East Coast comes here.
Is familiar with North Carolina.
Yeah. So this guy doesn't know the area. That's not good. And the pilot I'm talking to, this is nighttime. I'm doing IR spotting. So I have an IR laser. For those that don't know what that is, it's like a laser you can see with only your night vision goggles. If you've ever seen a night video of like a combat, you usually see the IR laser shooting out there. Well, the one we use, the ISLID 1000, is a 1000 watt or whatever laser. So it's like much brighter than anything that people have on their rifles. And I'm spotting the target with that, and we're doing live gun runs. And when you're doing night casts, there's a lot of like, I have to say this, you have to say this. Like you have to say, hey,
CAS is close air support, by the way. Everybody.
Yeah, close air support. And you have to, at night, because it's so dangerous, you know, and if you're looking at a laser on the ground, which end is the target? You know, so they have to say, the call that the aircraft has to say is visual friendly, contact the mark in 250, or whatever direction they're coming in from, in 090. And then I'm like, okay, cleared hot. The aircraft
he's
came
talking
around.
About directions the aircraft is coming in. We're saying like this is the direction by the compass, or by the
by a compass
they're coming in.
Yeah, by the compass. That's the direction they're coming in. And when he says in 250, that's the time for me to go, okay, he's within the parameters. I told him that he could call in between 180 and like 270 on the compass. So he's within the parameters, and he's pimping me to say cleared hot or abort him. So if I feel comfortable with everything, then I give him the cleared hot, then he shoots. This guy comes in, he goes, contact friendlies, visual to target, in 250. I go cleared hot, and my air officer comes on and is like, break, abort, abort. And he gets off the radio, he goes, what the fuck are you doing? And it was because the guy mixed it up. He didn't say visual friendlies, he said contact friendlies.
Oh,
and it was like, and it seems like for those on the outside, like, we got what they're talking about. What's the big deal? These rules are all written in blood. Like there's like when you're talking about close air support and live rounds coming off the rail, or like, you don't fuck around with that, because any mistake can lead to like dudes getting
even if you're just
bombing
themselves. The numbers. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because if you guys look up like ODA 595 in Afghanistan, there is a very well known.
Is that the early one? The early days of Afghanistan when they bombed themselves? Yeah.
Yep. That is the ODA, where there was a JTAC on the ground, and what ended up happening with that situation is I can't give away too much, but the thing, right, the freaking item that they used to give the contact information to the plane, they didn't reset it, right? Like, because when you turn on the item, like, it calibrates to the satellite, right? They didn't recalibrate it correctly, and the calibration that it sent to the plane was not correct. And then they
it was the JTAC reading out a grid to the. I mean, I don't think it's classified. I think
it's not at this point, but I just don't want to give like what the like.
What he did wrong? He just gave He gave his location rather than the enemy location. Yeah.
And that was the item that he was using gave the wrong location.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up coming out from that.
We don't even use that anymore.
Did it take out the whole ODA?
Yes.
No.
All but like 2 guys.
I think they mostly had casualties within the Afghans that were with. It almost killed Hamid Karzai or whatever his name, the president. Right? Yeah, it almost killed. He was. It was the Northern Alliance. It was the guys fighting with the Northern Alliance, and he was there with them, and the bomb hit right next to him.
ODA 595. The team sergeant was killed. Several members of the ODA was killed, and Hamid Karzai was almost killed.
Yeah,
but wasn't. But this is all. The only reason I bring up that story for people to go look up is exactly what you were saying. Like, if you kick just but 2 numbers and you're calling in shit,
it's a dangerous job, man. I've almost been hit so many times.
That's what I'm saying.
My very first time to the field as a forward observer, I got to 10th Marines, and they're like, hey, we got this field op coming up. You're going to come out with this. Let's go. We're going out. And I'm like, all right, cool. Go to the field. We have a Base X tent. We go to set up the tent. We set it up, and this is like for the Fire Support Coordination Center where we do the approvals and stuff like that. And we set up all of our antennas and all this stuff, and range control comes out, and we're set up on this kind of like this hillside. Range control comes out, and they're like, hey, you're going to have to move your tent down to here, and he points to a spot. And he's like, you're going to have to move it over to here because the erosion on this hillside, blah, blah, blah. And our chief is like, hey, dude, we're already fully set up. We're getting ready to start. We're about to go live. Or can we just move the vehicles off the hill and a couple things? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. And we start getting ready to shoot, and we're sitting there, and I'm inside the tent. And the first round they shoot in artillery is called the check round. And they shoot one round, and they go, hey, observe safe, short, whatever. They give like a reading of where it landed compared to where they wanted it to land. Basically, we're checking to make sure we're in the general area. And now once we start shooting all the guns, we can refine it. And it's to make sure everything's safe. And I remember we're sitting inside this Base X tent.
This for everybody that understands. Like, we're shooting from like a ground, like
777s
is on the ground to another point on the ground, right?
Yeah,
like it's not from aircraft.
No, this is artillery now. Now we're talking artillery, but this is the life of a fire support guy. It's dangerous. But I'm sitting there, and I hear them do the call for fire for the check round, and I hear the approval, and we're like, hey, approved, target number, whatever is approved. And off in the distance, I hear, boom, I hear shot, target number, da-da-da. You hear the boom. And I'm sitting there, and this is my very first time in the field with these guys. I'm a mechanic before this. And I'm sitting there, and I just hear, boom, and I'm like, damn. I look over at the guy, I was like, that's a lot louder out here by the impact area. And he's like, that was too loud. And our gunny was standing outside the tent, and he starts screaming. He's like, check firing, check firing. And what happened is the powder monkey, the dude on the cannon, only put in half the charge that he was supposed to, and the gun chief didn't check it, and the round landed, this 155 HE round landed 50 meters from us. And it was just the exact point that the range control guy pointed out to tell us where to put our tent, our Base X tent.
Holy
and we're
shit.
Like, dude, it was crazy. That was my very first time. That was my very first time in the field with artillery, and I'm like, wow, okay, like, now I get it, and then when I was in MOS school, we would go out to San Clemente Island off the coast of California and do naval gunfire shoots. And one of the times we're sitting there, they're shooting, and I'm sitting there talking to the instructor. We're just kind of bullshitting. And we're standing next to the OP, and we're bullshitting. We're watching rounds impact on the beach on San Clemente Island. And some of the rounds are landing short and hitting the water. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I just hear, and like dust kicks up between us. And this chunk of metal the size of my hand had fucking hit between our feet. Like, we were right next to each other. Between our feet and skipped like 40 more feet behind us and landed in the back of one of our pickup trucks. And we're like, what the fuck? Shit. And the instructor was like, that would have hurt, but you would have been okay. And I'm like, dude, fuck you, dude. It's like hand-sized jagged metal. Like, it's a dangerous job. It's a dangerous job, because you have live shit blowing up,
So no shit. There I was, 2018. I was in Syria, and I was the senior medic for the medical station on our little fob that we were on in Syria, right? And we had been taking indirect fire for, at this point, 2 weeks, and every single time it was between the same hours of the day, so we knew it was coming in. But this particular night, our Marine Sec 4 unit, which we had 555s It was either 555s or 777s. I don't know what they were.
It's the M777.
Yeah, that's what they were firing from our base. We had a Marine Corps unit, and we had outgoing and incoming on the same night. And this night, we had 2 rounds land inside of the fob walls. And dudes start bringing Marines inside of, like, hey, we got casualties. They're coming in. And I was like, oh, shit. All right, here we go. So they bring Homeboy in, and he was the FO for the 777s on our base, or on our little fob, right? So they bring him in, and they deliver him to me. That night, as he was coming in, right? So I'm standing outside of the medic station walls, like ready to receive him. We have another round that comes in and hits. Like, I literally watched it go off. Like, it lands in front of me like 30 meters off. Bright lights, like the whole damn thing, right? Like, everybody's seeing, like, boom, whitewash. I go back, my head hits the wall, I land, like, I'm still waiting for this Marine to come in. I don't know where he is or where the dudes are. The only reason I tell that part of the story is because the next morning, after the whole thing was over, we get him in, we treat him, like, send him off, medevac him. Homeboy's okay to this day, I'm glad to say.
Yeah.
I go back out, and I look at the impact point of the round, 30 meters in front of where I was standing. And I look at it, right, this giant crater, and I turn around and I look at where I was standing 30 meters from there. And I have pictures of it in my phone to this day, just to be like, how the fuck am I alive?
Yeah.
So I stand there and I look, and I right in the impact crater, I dig out 1.5 inches of steel.
Mm.
I sent it home to my father as a Christmas gift.
They almost got me.
Right.
That's how we felt, dude, because the casualty radius for a 155 is 50 meters. So when that landed 50 meters from us, I don't know how none of us got injured.
So I turn around and I look at where I was standing in the doorway, and I walk over and I take a picture of the door where I was standing in, where I got blown up against the wall. And there's just pock marks. Like, the entire doorway is just covered in shrapnel. Mm. And that's where I was standing. And I'm like, I told my dad when
it's like George Washington's fucking coat,
packaged it up, and I sent it home, and I was like, I don't know how I'm still here. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. All this shrapnel blown around me, and I was within 30 meters of this impact round going off. I was just standing here. And by the way, I was doing the super fucking stupid thing of, like, I had my operator ball cap on, and I was like, I'm waiting for waiting for the casualty. I don't need my body armor. I had my body armor on. I had my kit on, but I didn't have my helmet on. And I was like, and I go back to that. I go back to that story every single time that I'm just like, I was fucking stupid. I was fucking stupid, and I don't know how I'm still here. Because if you look at it, and I have the pictures of it in my phone. Here's the crater. Here's the 1.5 inch piece of steel that I dug out of the crater, and it was still hot the next morning. It was still fucking hot to my hand. And then there's where I was standing, 30 meters away from here. I don't know why I'm alive.
Fire support will get you, dude.
Fire support, like indirect fire, like that shit is
always dangerous.
It's fucking crazy, and people don't understand. Like, if you go back to World War II, right? The bulk of the people that were killed, right? If you scrub out the in DBI, the non-battle injuries and whatever that shit stands for, non-battle injuries and fucking diseases, right? There it is, diseases, right? Like, if you scrub those guys out, the bulk of the people that are killed after that were by indirect fire. Not by people actually pointing guns at each other.
Yeah.
It was indirect fire. Yeah. And, like, I took indirect fire for 2 straight weeks.
Fuck that, dude.
Why the hell am I still here?
I'm glad I never had that. We got mortared occasionally in Iraq, but I never knew if we were getting mortared or if EOD was blowing shit up. We'd find out later on.
That's what I'm saying.
There was like 2 times like the alarm went off and we had to go to the bunker because they shot some like fucking rocket at us or something like that. But,
right.
Yeah, most of the time we didn't even know. We're like, oh, boom. Like,
We'll right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Fire support's dangerous, dude. When I was at Bragg in 2000... when I was at Bragg in 2011, we had a howitzer explode while they were firing it. And luckily, no one died. Like at least six guys got injured pretty bad. And luckily, everybody... everyone harps on like wearing body armor. You gotta, like treat it if it's real. If you're doing that kind of thing, you're always wearing your helmet. You're always wearing your body armor with the plates in and all that stuff. And man, one of the guys had a piece of shrapnel sticking out of his sappy plate right in the middle of his chest. And it was like, dude,
there it is.
Like, yeah, the whole howitzer exploded. It was a faulty fuse, so it was an HE fuse or a PD fuse, point detonating, meaning when it hits the ground, it blows up. They put it on the end of the round, and then 2 guys rammed the round into the gun. Well, when they rammed that round into the gun, that caused it to explode. And those 2 guys were there, and the corpsman, the Navy corpsman, which is the medic, was standing right behind them, looking at the breach, and he took the brunt of it. I think he lost a toe or something like that. But yeah, it's just a dangerous job. What happens is we do these crazy things. Like you're an SF guy, like jumping out of planes or diving or blowing things up, close air support or CQB or any kind of range. You do it and you do it so often and nothing happens that it's like, this isn't that dangerous because we have all these safeties in place. And what happens is every once in a while, something, safety fails or something occurs, like when that round landed by us or when, a howitzer explodes. You can't plan for a faulty fuse. That kind of thing happens, and it's like, oh, fuck. It reminds you, like, this is a dangerous profession. Like, as much as we, like, play it off like this isn't that bad, like, when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize how dangerous it is or what level that you're doing it at. You're always just wanting to be better. You forget, And I remember the first guy I knew that died in training was a kid I knew in boot camp, and I got to the fleet a couple months after him. I got to my unit a couple months after him because my kid was born while I was in MOS school, so I got set behind like a month. Came back, he got to the unit, or he got to the fleet is what we call it when you get to your unit. He got to the fleet like a month before me, and I got to the fleet, and I remember getting to the supply section to get all my gear, the SIF, the combined issue facility where you get all your gear, your plate carrier, your pack, all that stuff. I get there and I see this guy's best friend that I knew him too. And I was like, hey, what's up, man? And he's like, hey, did you hear about Bailey? And I'm like, no, what happened to him? And he's like, he's dead, dude. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man. And I'm like, this is his best friend. I remember I was like, are you fucking serious? And he's like, yeah. And what happened? He got ran over by a 7-ton. This is an artillery unit. He was sleeping. They had their sleeping area. They're out in the field training. And he like moved his sleeping bag off a little bit farther from everyone to like text his girlfriend or some shit. I don't remember what it was. And they drove a 7-ton through the pause at night. And I don't think there was a ground guide or something happened. And he got ran over by the 7-ton. And they found him the next day when they were doing reveille and they were waking everybody up. And I was like,
holy
what?
Shit, dude.
And that was like, oh, fuck. And it was just like, you hear about these accidents, especially when you're in fire support. You hear about these accidents and you're like, man, it's always in the back of your mind, that. I don't know. I'd see someone do something unsafe or what I perceived as unsafe, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, there's no reason to risk it out here in fucking training.
Yeah.
Having guys drop bombs over the top of your head, you're not going to do that. So,
yeah. When I was in Montana, we were doing an exercise in the weapon storage area where the ICBMs are worked on, and they handcuffed one of the dudes as part of the exercise, and they just put him right in front of one of the SARTs, the security response team Humvees, and another part of the exercise kicked off, and the SART dudes got in the Humvee and just fucking took off, and they ran over this dude handcuffed right in front of the fucking Humvee. Dude, I know, just the dumbest fucking shit. And thankfully he didn't die, this person, but he was like pretty injured, obviously. But like, yeah, like they were like, why the fuck would you just ditch him right in front of the fucking Humvee, with a live exercise going on, and he was handcuffed, right? So it's not like couldn't like really get out of the fucking way. He didn't have a choice in the matter. Yeah, exactly. You know, and but yeah, no, just those things can happen. And what you were saying earlier too, like. I was security forces, it's not as cool or dangerous as special forces and, working with explosives all the fucking time. But, things can, when you're a police officer, things can go from 0 to 100 really fucking quick too, man. And like, I remember the first time something like that, like really happened to me. And, we went, long story short, basically we went to a guy who was, in the active process of like trying to hang himself. And we had to break into the house, get him. He had attached himself to like the guiding bar for like the garage door, and he was standing on like a chair, and they're like talking him out of the chair and all this shit. And anyway, like long story short, he ended up running from us when I took him to go pee because he was like drunk as fuck, waiting for like medical to get there. He had to fucking piss, and took him to the bathroom.
He had to piss before he hung himself.
No, this is after the fact. Like, we've got him down. We're talking to him. Like, we're waiting for medical to show up.
Can we take 5 real quick?
Yeah, right.
Hold on, guys.
I gotta pee. I don't. I'm probably gonna.
We can restart this in a second. We can restart.
Probably gonna piss myself when I hang myself anyway. But
that's why I was asking.
No. Anyway, no. I mean, and that does happen. But anyway, no. So like, he's down. We're waiting for medical to get there. Talking to him. He was drunk as shit already. He's like, hey man. He's like, I've had like 12 beers. He's like, I gotta piss. He's like, can I go pee? I was like, yeah, but we're doing this like UA style, dude. Like, I'm not just going to let you fucking go close yourself off in the bathroom. And so we go in there, and my buddy actually he took the guy's noose that he had tied, and he took it out of the garage, and he put it in the bathroom. So like the way his house is like set up is he had like this little bathroom off from the garage. And, so I walked into the bathroom with him, and the noose is like in the sink. And the dude just kind of like pauses and does that like drunk flop, like stops in the door and is like looking down at it. I just like reached around him. I took the noose. I handed it to like the army specialist that I was there with. And like I told him, like, hey, go take this back to the master sergeant and then come back here. Right. And he did not come back. And this guy he's standing there. He pisses for what felt like forever, because he really had to pee. And as we're leaving the bathroom, he takes off up a couple of steps into like a den area. And I chase after him because, obviously, like, there's nothing good going to come from him running from me.
Right.
And I notice off in the distance, there's like a dry bar that's like set up in the corner. And my eyes just noticed there was like a field dressing, like Bowie knife that's just sitting right on top of this dry bar. I was like, I know he's going to fucking go for this knife. And he grabs it, turns around, and attacks me with it. And, so we end up wrestling with him. I fight him off, eventually able to get him down on the ground, and we handcuffed him. But, like, I went from watching this guy pee, crying, talking to me about his kids and, like, music, and then he trying to kill me, like, a minute and a half later.
That's crazy. I thought you were going to say you shot him.
No, dude, I'm going to tell you right now, if I would have, like, tried to step back to draw to engage with him, I would have died. Because
you don't have much
the reaction time. I did. Like, the first thing I did was reach out and grab his hands when he tried to get me with the knife. And like that was just total fucking instinct. And like, for real, like people were like, man, why didn't you shoot him? I was like, honestly, that didn't even cross my mind. Like I just was pure adrenaline reacting to this situation. And my buddy, like, he'll joke.
Small arm situations, knives are viciously freaking dangerous, man.
Right. My buddy likes to tease me. He's like, dude, he's like, the way you asked for help, he's like, I thought that you like needed to tie your shoe. He's like, because you're just like, hey, he goes, hey, Pete, come here real quick, is what you said. And like, he walked in like carrying the iPad we had on the patrol car. And then he like saw me like holding this guy's hands with this big fucking knife. I don't even remember that. And I was like, I don't remember asking for help at all, dude. And he's like, you were so calm. And but anyway, yeah, I mean, like, it did.
You know as well as I do about auditory exclusions, because I like through all of my combat.
Your parasympathetic nervous system when your adrenaline is going.
Yeah, like auditory exclusions are like a huge thing where it's like your ears just shut off.
Well, I'm sure you guys have. Well, maybe I don't know about you, TJ, but like you guys have all done like Kim games, right? Like where they get you like simulate your parasympathetic nervous system getting activated, and like the first thing that goes away, it is like you say, like auditory exclusion, and like small muscle movement like goes away really fast, And this is stuff that like we train with like police wise because. obviously these situations happen, right? Where like, it's like we need to remember like what's in this room, or like, understand that like once your adrenaline's going, you're not going to have like the ability to draw isn't going to be as effective as it is if you're just standing there and like you're at the range and you're just like pulling out, right? And so they just like put you through these things. But that was the first time I remember ever really having like a full like adrenaline letdown. And like that feeling, like you understand like why it's called a letdown, because it really went from like my head to my fucking toe. Like you can feel it move through your body. And then I just
get tired.
You do. I was just gonna say I got super cold and I started yawning because I was really tired, and I was like, man, like shaky. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
I was just gonna ask, did you get an erection?
I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like I remember that like
happened to me.
Right.
No, you never had one?
No. I mean, I had one, but
I mean, I've had. I was like, I wake up with one every morning. I mean, like
no. Right. So on the first time that I got like actually shot at and like rounds were coming in,
the adrenaline got you, huh?
I looked down and I had fucking wood.
You're like, I gotta get my combat jack in real quick.
Right.
Well, that part's normal, but you're going outside.
Saying, like it happened to me, and like my buddy, he made a joke
shooting rounds while I'm shooting rounds.
He was like, God. Well, I can't say that. He was like, fucking hell. He was like, you're a fucking like, and I was like, I looked down and I didn't even realize I had wood, but I had fucking wood, dude. Like,
maybe that LSA.
I was like. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know, dude. But it was like, I had all the same stuff that you were talking about, Brandon. Like I cold sweat, like my hands, like they were mittens. They might as well have been. Like I couldn't do anything with them. And I looked down and I was like,
I just remember feeling like ridiculously cold, and then like I got the shakes. But like it was weird because like. Yeah. I was fine. We really, really big dude, probably like 6'5", like 300 pounds. Like the fact that like you were saying about like that round and like why you're still here. Like people are like, I can't believe you fought that guy off alone. I'm like, it had to be one of these fucking moments, like the mom that lifts the car off of her kid, like just adrenaline strength, like the retard adrenaline strength, probably.
Life or death, man.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly
and really, he's handcuffed that big where like we have to use like 2 on his hands, and we handcuffed his feet just because of the shit that we just did. And like, my buddy helps me up off the ground. I'm standing. He's like, you okay? And I was like, yeah. And the second I said, yeah, I'm okay. Like I just had this whoosh down my body, super cold. I got the shakes a little bit. I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, dude, you had adrenaline let down. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm fucking, I might go get my fleece, like shit. And it lasted for a few minutes, but like, yeah, it was weird.
That's
so
crazy.
the first time for me, I was in the back of a Humvee, and we had that moment that you're talking about, and I literally couldn't keep my eyes awake.
Oh, you got that tired?
I literally could not. I was in the back, and I was just like,
dude, that puts a lot on your body, man. You have that much cortisol and adrenaline running through it.
Hate Rip-Its. Like a lot of dudes.
That's blasphemous, dog.
I was more of a shot coffee guy.
I can't stand
Wild
Rip-Its,
Tiger.
But I was literally in the back. Yeah, we have Wild Tigers, and I was literally like, I was like this, dude. I was like, fuck, like I can't get back to the. I was like, give me something, and they just handed me a Rip-It, and I pounded 2 of them, and I was like,
midget cans or like full cans.
No, they were
midget cans.
Dude, those always made my heart pound too hard. I couldn't drink those.
Rip-Its.
That's what I'm saying. I hate.
We had shot coffees. Did you ever get those?
I hated them. But
those were
after this moment that you're talking about, Brandon, I was the same way where I was just like my hands were shaking and I was like cold sweating, and I was just like, and then the letdown happened, and the letdown was like
it's not just a turn of phrase. Like it's called a letdown for a reason.
I can't keep my eyes open, and we're driving back to the base, and I was like I'm supposed to be on security. I was like, give me something. I looked at my buddy, and I was like, I can't keep my fucking eyes open. And he goes, here you go, man. And he just hands me 2 cans of Rip-Its, and I was like, fuck it.
Did they teach you guys about this? Like, because every time we went to the rifle range, we always got a class on fight or flight and all the chemical reactions and how these all of these scenarios.
The units I trained.
Yeah, you hear about all these things. Like every year, you get these classes.
It's a near narcotic effect that you have. It's almost like your pinpoint focus, like you were on coke.
You do. You get tunnel vision, like you said. You can get tunnel vision. Affects everybody differently, but yeah, like you will have different like range like different things we'll do. Like maybe like sometimes you just like the regular range day where you're just like firing, and some days it's like, well, we're gonna go run and then do a bunch of calisthenics, and then you're gonna go do the range, like to like simulate getting your parasympathetic nervous system activated and all that stuff. And like I said too, we did like the Kim game, and we would do other different things like with like PT beforehand, and then go into a room and then go in immediately into a scenario, those kinds of things like we do to like kind of simulate, so you can kind of like know what to expect. It's obviously not the same, but you simulate it as much as you can in a controlled environment. But yeah, we would do stuff like that.
They only taught that class when we went for our annual rifle qual. That was part of it. That was part of the annual rifle qual, was getting that class. Because their whole rifle qualification process is like 2 weeks for the Marines every year. So every year you get that class, and you'd be out there on the range shooting and stuff like that. But then we would also do what you're talking about. You do these flat ranges where you're moving up and shooting from barriers, moving from barrier to barrier, trying to get your heart rate up, and just to kind of, or running with two people, just all kinds of different stuff but like you said, you practice as much as you can, but it's one of those things where until you do something like crazy and then actually, go through it, then it's like, you can't ever replicate, like, it's hard to replicate that kind of realistic.
There's no replacement for
reaction.
Experience.
And it's probably not good for you. Like one of you said earlier, like that's not good for your body to have this like adrenaline dump. You probably don't need that all the time anyway. So,
I could imagine. I mean, sure, there's probably studies out there on like the effect of like people who have been through these like situations like this over and over and over again. Because like you can have a response like this to any sort of trauma, as like a rape victim or whatever, an attack. Like you can have these like adrenaline letdowns, and things that happen to you, But like I'm sure there's like tests or studies that done on like people's brains after the fact. And I'm sure there's all kinds of science out there, but I don't know any of it.
Actually, I'm gonna push back on you guys just a little bit, and I think that the idea of, so I'm super anti AI, like Brandon, you know this, right? Like I'm very anti this, right? But if we can develop some type of AI, right, like visual training
some kind
scenario,
of a VR simulation for it,
augmented
trigger
reality,
where we can augmented reality or whatever, and we can put soldiers through it, right? Especially coming out of the GWOT, where we can be like, hey, listen, boys, this is what Staff Sergeant so and so saw, right? Boom, and we put them in this training
kind
scenario,
of immersive experience,
right?
Now we're just watching Ukrainian YouTube videos on
drone videos from Ukraine,
like a GoPro and drone videos,
right? Maybe
did that knife fight video from the other day.
Oh my god!
And I'm not saying that we do this like to everybody, but like if you volunteered to be in the military, like you volunteered for this, and we can use this to train people, right? Because we know that the brain's ability to train to a certain scenario, right? If you look at a video screen, there is very little difference in the neurons firing when you're watching a video game screen and like what you experience in real life. It's very little difference.
Well, so we do something similar. Like my last unit, we had like the Oculus headsets that were like sandboxed for specific things, but it was like active shooter scenarios, right, where you're responding to these active shooters, and like you're in a school or a hospital or an office building.
Sure.
There's people running by you. You can see like the shooter engaging, bystanders, and they're falling, like all this stuff. Or like they'll put you in a scenario where like it's a domestic, and like you have to like talk this guy down with a baseball bat or whatever. So like there's some of that, right? Like that we would go through, and it's like your annual, because you're handed like an M9 that's got like a blank adapter in it, and like you're standing and you've got this augmented reality headset on, and you're like walking through the hospital or the office building, and you're looking for, and then like supposed to be paying attention, like there's the gunshots, I'm going to go this way, and you're heading like direct threat. And so we do stuff like that. It's like video game. It's not like very good graphics, right? But we do some of like what you're talking about, like we did. But it's not, it's very specific situations. Like I said, like at an active shooter or domestic situation, or even like a bar fight, like they have these augmented reality scenarios that like we would use, but it was a once a year thing. Not like an all the time thing. And then obviously like, CQB training, you're going to like a shoot house, you got like flashbangs and shit. Like you can get fucking accustomed to those, whatever, obviously there's like some simulation in that, getting hit with a fucking paint round isn't the same as taking a real round, obviously, but like, you get some of that like accustomed, but, yeah, we do use the augmented reality thing.
I think paint sims are the best training.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can see like on your uniform, right? Well, yeah. I got hit in the pinky one time, dude. This shit, yeah.
The worst.
Every single time that I have ever gone into a house, I have gotten shot in the dick and the finger. I hate it.
The finger's the worst, dude.
Hate it.
And we had not the little ones, like the simunitions. We weren't using the like little simunitions. These were the full ones.
Yeah.
These were like the full size rounds that went into the rifles too. They didn't have.
Right.
I was like, fuck, man, this thing's hurt. Like. There's a thing in the Marine Corps called the Infantry Immersion Trainer, which is like a mixed reality thing. It's like I was just looking it up. It's a 30,000 square foot like warehouse basically, and they build like a village inside of it. And they have like audio stuff and visuals. They have like I think they have like video screens, but that kind of look like to make it look like someone's standing there and there's people there, and they have these things that kind of put you into it. The situations, kind of like what you're talking, not VR with the headsets, but like you're actually moving through this area immersion. That's like it's supposed to be kind of like a bazaar. You know what I'm saying? People are talking. Yeah. There's like animal noises. There's the smells.
Right.
It does all of that where you're like trying to put you in that situation.
Yeah, it gives you a full 4D full immersion. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was what I was talking about earlier.
I remember this range that we had at Pendleton too that I went to, and they had like. Where they had the fake RPGs where they're on like a string. You'd be walking through and an RPG comes flying across the fucking thing and like, oh shit, and boom, and like blow up. You're like, holy shit, like that was crazy.
That's pretty cool though. RPG on a string, a little different than soap on a rope, I guess.
It was basically kind of like these Hollywood specialists came down and helped them build this thing.
That's
there's
cool,
a guy
though.
running it. So
it wasn't
that obviously like
style with clay.
I don't know, like security forces level like training. We didn't have anything that like cool or immersive. Like maybe the special operations guys in the Air Force, maybe they have something like that. But like the closest like we had really to the immersion.
Stick out some drunk guys.
The thing is every base, most bases have these kind of things to them, but most people don't know about them, so they never request to use it. That was one thing I learned when I became like a sergeant and then a staff sergeant, and I had my own team. I had an officer that was really hardcore about training, which was fine. I gave him a lot of grief about other stuff, but like he knew how to schedule training and like get good, really good training going. And I learned. I was like, oh, there's literally a website that we go to, and here's a list of all the training facilities, and we just request to use it. Like, oh, okay. Oh, we have ammo. We have plenty of ammo. Like,
that's like what you were talking about earlier.
Ammo. Yeah, it's like closed mouth doesn't get fed, and that was the thing. Like, oh, well, we have this immersion trainer. Let's use that. Why just go to the regular range when we can use that one?
Can I say a thing really quick? If you're like a spouse of a service member, there is also a thing out there for whatever you're trying to do.
An officer's wife immersion trainer.
Right, just go look for it. Like, it exists. The only thing that keeps you from having access to it is nobody knows about it. Like, they're out there. Please
just
go
Google
look
stuff
for it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
If you're a spouse and you're trying to get you let's just say like you want to have help with your resume. Like, there is a thing that exists out there for you.
Yeah, the Job Skills Center does stuff like that.
Just go look for it. The
military
just
family life center, where the fuck it's called
Right.
Yeah, we called it MCCS.
See?
Right, and then it's something different on the fucking Army post or the Air Force base. It's the same shit. Yeah.
It exists.
They run all these different facilities. Like, I know on Pendleton and Lejeune, we had like a almost like a do-it-yourself auto center where you could pull up and change your own oil.
Oh, the place where you can go do whatever you want with your car and
those places are awesome.
Pay for you.
Yeah, you pay like it was. I remember I'd pay like $3 to use
and they have
all
the
area.
tools
They give you all the
you.
tools. There's an ASC certified mechanic there to help you out if you have any questions.
Like,
no, that's badass, dude. I took my BMW over there all the fucking time because I had this piece of shit 1999 like 3 Series when I was in Germany that had a fuckload of electrical issues. I was always over at fucking Capone and up in the fucking stall with that shit. It's always something. The German dude got to know me. He's like, again. I'm like, bro, like, fuck yeah, again. Like, what the fuck, man? You know?
It's
so you
BMW.
again, dude. You're the one. You're the fucking
It's a
BMW mechanic. You again, dude. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You know? Right?
For sure.
Yeah, those places are awesome. Yeah.
There's a lot of good. That's the kind of stuff I miss about the military, like those kind of little fringe benefits that are out there. That
People
if you really take advantage, like there's trips. You can go on trips.
Oh yeah.
You can do like all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff out there. The bad part is a lot of like military guys would rather sit in their barracks and bitch about how bad life sucks and like get wasted rather than go like, oh hey, we're putting together a trip up to Big Bear for a ski trip. It's like. I always tell my guys, I was married, so I lived in housing and had my own things going on. But I'm like, the single guys, like, why aren't you taking advantage of this? They're putting together a trip to Vegas. Like, jump on that. Like, you have to pay for it, but it's not much.
All of the boys that listen to this that are in the military, talk to your chaplain. Your chaplain is tied into all of
everything
morale related.
All the trips you could ever take or do anything. Talk to your chaplain. You probably are not because you're like, oh, I'm not a Christian. I don't care. Yeah. Talk to your chaplain, bro. I guarantee you he knows about.
Yeah, they're the hookup for that.
All those little chaplain's assistants, like that's all they fucking do all day is coordinate morale events. Like that's it. Go find the fucking staff sergeant hanging around the chapel that has an office there. They can tell you literally everything going on all fucking year. I guarantee it. They probably have like a fucking gift card to Baskin Robbins on base in their office for you too.
I guarantee it. And you could probably walk in there tomorrow and walk out with like a T-shirt and like a mug,
like a balloon,
and like a bunch of
Girl Scout cookies.
Just because
Girl Scout cookies always.
You've never talked to him before.
I don't even get Girl Scout cookies anymore because I remember being in like Afghanistan or Iraq. They would just send us
all the
boxes.
Girl Scout cookies you could ever eat, dude.
Girl Scout cookies and Otis Spunkmeyer muffins.
Bro, the Otis Spunkmeyer muffins, man. Yeah.
I can't eat another fucking muffin, man.
No. That's all that's in the fucking chow hall, man. It's like, that's it.
People would devour those muffins. I'm like, how can you eat this?
That's 550 calories you just ate.
Dude, I looked at them one time. Yeah, I looked at that one time and I was like, I'll never eat another one of these. I was like, Jesus Christ, this thing's a sugar bomb.
65% of my polyunsaturated fats. Holy fuck,
Muffins,
Jesus,
Pop-Tarts, like
Pop-Tarts,
like
the strawberry Pop-Tarts,
cookies.
Yeah,
endless.
Yep, dude, we had the little like G2 powder packs.
Can I ask you guys a thing?
Crazy.
What?
I love being at home with my family.
Yeah.
Like, I love being here. If you guys could go back down tomorrow, would you do it? Like for the GWOT back when we were doing it.
It was nice.
Go down range tomorrow.
It was the niceness about it is there's like it's so simple. You get up and you do your job. Like you get up, and on my second deployment to Afghanistan when I was an advisor, I felt like that was my best deployment because I felt like I was doing my job. I was on an advisor team, and I was my team's JTAC. So I was never not busy. Every time we had 3 teams for each of the Tulais, the Afghan companies, and every time one of those teams went out, I went out with them. So I was always out because there was only one JTAC. And you don't worry about bills. You don't worry about pay, anything like that. You're not all the little nonsense that's going on, the little drama in families and stuff like that, like in the family. You don't know any of that stuff. All that stuff is happening and you have not even aware. You're just there doing your job. It's super simple. Wake up, eat, maybe work out, maybe go on a mission. Like that's it. I don't know if I would necessarily... I don't know, man. You almost get killed a couple times, and you're like, maybe, maybe not. This is cool, but
I'd rather not die.
Yeah, Sangin was a shithole, so I don't know if I'd go back there. I don't know. That's a tough question because I almost had that kind of. It's almost posed to you, or was to me when I got out of the Marines. I kept getting job offers for contracting companies. Like people would hit me up. They're like, "Oh, you're a JTAC evaluator." They're like, "Hey, guy, we have this contract in Africa. Do you want to do it?" And it's like big money, man. Some of these contracts are big money. You're talking
for a year, you know.
I remember when the whole Ukraine thing kicked off. There was a guy reaching out about putting teams of guys together to go to Ukraine and help pull people out, pull people that were in danger of being overrun by the Russians, like go in vehicles, civilian vehicles, and pull guys out. And he was like offering some big money, and I'm like, man, that sounds cool, but I kind of like being here. I'm like sitting here smoking weed and stuff. Like, this is I'm good with this. You know, I don't know, man. When I got out of the military, like, there were definitely offers for me to work either at a schoolhouse or as a contractor and kind of keep that vibe going. But when I got out, I was so just done with it that I didn't even want to work as a civilian contractor on base, like range control or something like that. Those jobs were there, but I was like, dude, I want to do something completely different. Like I did I did everything I ever wanted to do, and it's time for me to move on. You know, the only thing I really miss about the Marine Corps is like going out to the OP and like conducting my own air show. You know, it's like that's what you do as a JTAC. You get to conduct your own air show because you're telling the aircraft, hey, you're flying at this altitude, and I want you to come from the west. So you're holding them in different areas. You got artillery on call, and you're just sitting here like, all right, come in from the west, and when you finish that, when he pulls off, artillery's going to start shooting, and then we're going to have machine guns rip off over here. And when you're doing that, and it all like everything's blowing up and everything's just like going, it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is badass.
You ever seen Tropic Thunder?
No, I actually haven't.
Oh, that fucking there's a scene in Tropic Thunder where he calls it like the fast movers are gonna come in and like bomb the area, and he has like these triggers for like all this like the setup explosives for like the movie prop. He goes big old titties and he hits it like that's how I imagine you guys are standing out there just. You know,
you're like, all right, hey, set TOT 05, which is like 5 minutes after the hour. So like right now it'd be like what 10:05. Yeah. So you set TOT 05. Everybody gets the call. Everyone reads back. Aircraft reads back. Artillery reads back. If you got mortar reads back. And then you're just waiting. 04 happens. Artillery starts shooting. Boom, boom, boom. It cuts off 30 seconds before 05. And aircraft come in, drop their ordnance. Boom, 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 boom. They pull off, and then the artillery picks back up to protect them on their way out. And you're just like, fuck yeah. Like when it goes well, you're like, hell yeah, this is awesome. When it doesn't go well, like when you fuck it up, then you're like, damn.
What you said sounds to me
takes out the content, you know.
When I'm doing my job, it's awesome. Like when I'm doing the thing that you train me to do, and I get to do it, it's awesome.
I mean, even in training, it was like, if I could do anything, I would say, let me go back out on the OP for a day. Let me go back out, bring in some Cobras. Let's do some gun runs, some rockets and guns with some Cobras.
It reminds me of the 1973 film Rambo, where he says in the end of the film, overseas, I was in charge of, insert vehicles and whatever. But when I come back, like I was able to do all
First
this
Blood,
shit.
1982.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 1982. Thank you.
That's an issue. Guys. I think what you're saying, what you're alluding to there is an issue that a lot of guys have when they get out. Mm-hmm. You go from I think that's why we have a lot of like mental health issues with veterans and stuff because every day is so serious.
That's where I was going with my point, but yeah, please.
Yeah, every day is serious. Like it's literally life and death. Like if I don't bring in the aircraft correctly, if I don't do this, if something happens, like there's actual repercussions for this.
Yeah.
And I kind of ran into this to myself. When I got out, I went to college and then I got a job at an advertising agency. And I'm like, this is all bullshit. Like, if I don't do my job or I don't do it well, who fucking cares?
I can relate to that so hard, dude.
No one's going to die. No one, nothing feels serious
and
anymore.
as you guys talk about this, I'm still in. So please, this means more to me than to anybody else. So
I was just going to say, man, like where I was at in Germany is It's a joint Army Air Force base. It's 1,000 square mile AOR, law enforcement, security, all off base of Polizei. Super busy. A lot of real shit happens there all the time. It's like being an actual cop in a city. Like the best. Like if you're a military police, you're on base. Like this is not like that at all. Like it's super high tempo. Always a lot of cases. Always very serious. Lots of traffic fatalities, suicides. All kinds of crazy shit. And so you're there, and like even the lowest ranking guys know their job so well. It's like, man, I would trust this A1C over the techs I knew at like my last base, tech sergeant in the Air Force at E6, right? And so like you have no choice but to know your job in and out, kind of like what you're talking about, Chris, because you do it. You're doing it all day, like all shift, like you're always on response. Like a response somewhere is queued up on your iPad because there's so many fucking things to do and go to and all these different things. And then like the camaraderie and trust is ridiculous because you're always with the same group of people. You're always at these responses. You see people who've passed away. You go to these things where like, maybe a baby died or whatever, like these crazy things, or like the stupid psycho shenanigans shit that happens, with people in fights in bars downtown or whatever, right? So like the camaraderie is like on another level. And I loved that. And that group of people, you just become so tight knit. It's like that definition of like family that the military, when you talk about, like, that's what it was. And then I get to Travis Air Force Base, which is supposed to be like another high tempo base. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Right? Like I immediately was like, no one here knows their job. It's all like puffed up chest, fucking peacock, like nothing happens here. None of you give a fuck. None of you know your job. You all pretend like you do. Like it was automatic. It was like the drop off was ridiculous, And then like, to your point, Chris, like now working in the civilian sector, and just like listening to people and the problems they have, like at work or whatever, I'm just like, bro, I just watched you stand over there for 45 fucking minutes bullshitting with this person. Like, what do you mean you don't have time to do this? Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It is. You get disaffected. It all feels really like fast. Bullshit. It does. And it's so easy to become jaded and sarcastic with people. And I like have had to accept. Actually, dude, I would totally sit here if I could find them real fast and read you this conversation I had with my wife at work. And I actually called our good friend Aaron from work. I was like, hey man, have you ever felt this? And he's like, give me a call. I'm driving. And Aaron is a retired PJ. And so he's like, dude, he's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's like, I am the chief operations officer, for this thing. I'm like having these conversations with people that have been doing this longer than me, and they're taking notes because like all I'm doing is applying principles that I learned in the military and just laying them over top what I'm doing here as a civilian. And he's like, it's just like, it's so wild to see these people that have been doing this job for so long, and they're almost clueless about like how to get shit done and then like stay on task. And it's so easy to become disaffected with that environment and be like, whatever, man, fuck this. Like I've had to like really, even the last like month and a half, sort of check myself and then come to the realization and accept that realization that it's over. Like that lifestyle is over, and have to be okay with it. And that I just am not going to ever have that anywhere ever again. Like unless I guess maybe if I went to like a police department, which I would never do. I have no interest in being a police officer, but like doing what I do now, like that'll never happen ever. Yeah. And I have to be okay with that. And it sucks and it's weird, but like I'm kind of like getting okay with it now,
It takes a little time, yeah.
It definitely does.
For me, and I just want to say a thing on screen, and I do want to say this on screen because I don't want everybody or anybody to be able to take me back on this, but I am trying to find a way to divorce the United States Army.
Yeah.
Because I'm rolling in on my time of being done with it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ETS out of the United States Army. And I've been here for 15 years. Yeah. But I've given her my mind, my body, and my soul. And
how long until your EAS?
18 months.
Well, see, at least I mean, that was the thing too with me that made it a little easier is that I made my mind 2 years out. At 2 years out, I was like, I'm done. Because I told the Marine Corps, I was like, if you send me on this last deployment, if you send me on ship again, that's what it was. I was like, we just got home. I was like, if you send me on ship again, I'm getting out.
I'm going to burn the building.
And they sent me. They're like, hey, man, we got to send you. You're the only guy that, there's a hot fill for this position. You're going on ship. And I'm like, all right, I'm getting out. And I immediately enrolled in college classes and knocked out like 30-something credits while I was on ship because there's nothing to do.
Right.
But if you have that mindset and you can start planning for it, and it makes it a lot easier. I will say the thing that, when you get out, when you leave, it's like, oh, shit, that's over. It's like –
it's a weird feeling.
There's kind of two kinds of people, I think, that get out. There's the guys that get out, and one day they're in their unit, and they got PT, and then the next day they're at home. They're back in their hometown, and it's like, oh, shit, I'm back here again. And then there's the other guy that either hangs around the base area and lives there and just kind of – they're out of the military, but that's kind of like me. I'm in San Diego still, and because I have this military podcast – I'm still like, I'm not in the military, but I still have that kind of like
adjacent.
I have those people around me, so I can talk about the military stuff. I get updates about military stuff, and it's just kind of like I never fully left it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas some people get out and they are like, I don't want anything to do with the military. I don't want anything to do with the government. I'm going to go work in my hometown to be a butcher, or something like that. Other guys are like, I'm going to try to get a job on base, be a range control guy, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to retire right outside the base and stay in that area.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of decide which of those two you're going to be. And I think, I don't know, it's tough, man. And when you get a real job, if you decide to get a job outside of the military, I got into advertising. I worked at this agency, and I kind of was like, dude, I don't care more about your company than you do. So if you're not here, I had a problem, my boss would never be there.
Right.
Sometimes I'd come into work and I'd be the only person there. I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? Why?
Right.
Everyone else is working from home and no one told me?
Yeah.
What the hell? And I was like, eventually I was like, dude, fuck this. I don't need this. That's why I ended up doing my own thing, because I'm just kind of jaded from working under idiots. And I'm not saying that the advertising people were idiots, but just under people that I disagree with their decisions. And I'm like, I'm tired of being dictated to. So I started doing my own thing, and that made it a little easier, man.
A lot of military guys do end up doing their own thing. They go into business for themselves. I have a friend who has his own landscaping business, and he didn't do landscaping in the military. He just figured out how to do it. But it's so funny, what you were talking about, dude. On base, as security forces, we have building walkthroughs every day, and those building walkthroughs include the BX on base. And so you're walking through the BX, and I remember the first time recognizing that, dude, I see the same old guys walking around the BX with they're wearing the new updated PT gear jacket, and they've got maybe they got the Air Force hat on. And I started recognizing I see these guys 4 or 5 times a week at the BX, and they're just pushing around an empty cart. And I remember coming what the fuck, and thinking about, I was dude, these guys are literally here because they feel like they belong here. They don't need a fucking thing at the BX. They need the community, and they need to be on base because it's their identity. And I was man, part of me was that's a little endearing, but then also I felt bad for them. Yeah, I'm fuck, dude. This 85-year-old Vietnam vet who's just pushing around an empty cart 4 days a week at the BX on base is fuck, that sucks,
It can't be for a lot of people, for most people, when you get out, you have to have something else. You have to get into something else. You got to give your life to something else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of guys will get out and become big hunters, or they'll become big car guys, or they'll be. You got to find some hobby. You're never gonna replace the military.
It's the high school letterman's jacket. This is what I've always said about it. It's the high school letterman's jacket. This is who you are, right? I've seen it from people that never graduated high school. They say, "Oh, I was on the high school football team." Right? This is the most the highest thing that I ever achieved. And then they get into the Army and they go, "Oh, I was a jump master." So then they become the Jumpmaster guy, this is the highest thing that I ever achieved. And they go, oh, I got a Ranger tab. Oh, okay, that's the highest thing you ever achieved. I'm just talking about Army stuff.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that,
right?
Because when they're
nothing wrong with it.
You want them to be
and then they go, oh, now it's a Special Forces tab, and they go, this is the highest thing I ever achieved, and then they hit the end of it, and they go, oh, how do I go back into normal person world?
Yeah.
Right? Like this is all I've got.
It's a world. It's a different world for sure.
It is, man. Like, the military has its own mannerisms. It has its own dogma. It has its own in groups and out groups, and like it's hard to integrate back into. Like, just the civilian workforce is like the best way to sort of analogize this, And fortunately, where I work, there's like an Army MP that I can relate to, and he kind of gets it. You know what I mean? Like, we'll make jokes and shit, it's totally fucking cool that I have that. I'm lucky that I have that. But like, it's one of these things where like you said, it's gonna take some time. Like, you just have to. You're gonna start recognizing things, and you're gonna start like noticing that your lens you're looking through, what's in front of you, is through that military lens, and you're gonna start recognizing where that lens doesn't work for you anymore. And it's going to start breaking down that thought pattern that you developed over your time in the military. And that's kind of when that like identity you had starts to break down a little bit, and you can start building a different one. But it's one of those things where, like, you can't be that guy that gets out of the military and then just doesn't do anything, because that's when it starts to eat you. It starts to become like this, like,
life's not over.
It's not. Thank you. It's not.
You got 30 more years of life at least, probably. You got to do something else.
Exactly. That's perfect. You can't be that dude. You have to find a hobby, like you said, or like you have to start realizing, like, okay, I'm at work. Some of this way I think about this shit doesn't really work. So like, what got me here isn't going to get me there. I can use all these skills I have, and I can translate them and figure out how to translate them in the civilian workforce. And then the other half of it too is like, kind of like, I have to engage with people a little bit to like understand who they are more before I let parts of my personality out, a lot more than I did in the military, where it's like, I can go dark humor all day with other cops or EMTs or whatever. But like, 55-year-old mom of 2 high school students and who's worked in an office job her whole life isn't going to find a dead baby joke, just not going to receive it very well, like, so it's like you're learning a whole new identity, man. Like,
I was at a party when I got out. I was at a party. It was at my buddy's place, and one of he's an accountant. He was like my neighbor when I moved out. It was like one of the first civilian guys I hung out with after I got out. And his friend was also an accountant, and we were all hanging out and drinking and stuff. And like a new strike video had come out on like YouTube or something like that. And I was like, dude, check this out. And it was like 3 dudes getting smoked with like a GBU or something like that. I was like, shaboom. And he was like, did I just watch somebody die? And I was like,
ooh, my bad.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, this is a different crowd. Like,
Bro.
like everybody else would be like, whoa, what was the strike? What were they doing? What was the unit? It was like,
yeah.
It was just like, oh, okay, civilian guys don't want to watch people get blown up.
I had a similar experience to that before Christmas. I fucking was sitting watching. I literally was watching like this joke you just made about like the Ukrainian drone footage thing. I'm like on my phone, and my coworker walks by me, and she's an older lady, and she's like, "What are you watching?" And I was like, "Oh, it's the combat footage from Ukraine." And she's like, "Why would you watch that?" And I was like, "Well, it's drone warfare." Like, I'm like, this is like interesting,
awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, she's like, "Well, what's going on?" And I was like, well, there's 3 Russian dudes in a trench, and they're encroaching on, right. They're encroaching on this one Ukrainian dude who's just like spraying and praying at them, and he dies. And she's like, "Why would you watch that?" And I was like, "I'm sorry you asked." Like, that's what, I was like, the volume wasn't even on. It wasn't like she could hear like the gunfire or whatever. Like, it was like, sorry. Like, she's like, I
try not to watch that stuff myself. I try to, like that knife video you mentioned earlier.
Dude,
I saw that. I saw that a couple days ago, and I was like, oh man. It's just, to me, it's super sad. It's sad. The like, that the war porn is like you're watching the worst of humanity, and then you're like, okay, well, that was crazy. Let's go get lunch. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it's so sad that you're watching these dudes kill each other over something that we think is bullshit. A lot of Americans think is bullshit. Like, just, let Ukraine be Ukraine, let Russia be Russia. Like, why are hundreds of thousands of people dying? And when you're watching it in HD, and there's new clips coming out every week, and people are sharing them, and again, it's like, oh, check this out, watch. Oh, crazy. And then, anyways, you want to go get lunch?
Oh, flamethrower drone, wow.
Yeah, the flame, Jesus.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff, man, I'm just like, I try not to watch it because it's such a sad part of humanity. Yeah, I see it just like everybody else does, especially because I run a news channel on Instagram, that Former Action News page.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly seeing the worst of the worst because I'm looking for news. And when you're looking for news, you're going to run into the people getting sliced, people getting shot, people getting car wrecks. Like, it's just the worst videos, and you're like, fuck, did I really need to see that? Like,
dude, yeah. You remember Live Leak back in the day?
Oh yeah, dude.
I remember being a fucking brand new airman in the fire team building, and I'm in there, and the fucking fire team leader was like, so come in here and watch this. And it was that fucking video, like the cartel guys, like filleting somebody's skin off, like they were pouring like the boiling water. I was like, holy fuck. I'm like, that's it. And it's a government like nipper computer. I'm like, I can't get YouTube, but you're on Live Leak watching somebody get their skin peeled. Like, I just, that one was like, I'm good, dog. Like, I don't need to watch this one.
There were videos on Sipper like that. You could watch cartel videos, people getting beheaded and shit.
Yep.
And I remember like a dude like, check this out, they're beheading this guy. And I'm like, why do I want to watch that, dude?
No, me neither, dude.
No,
I have enough shit I have to remember on my own because I lived it. I don't need to watch somebody else go through something like that on screen. I'm good.
My problem with it is that I put myself in that person's shoes, and I always ask myself, like, what were they thinking when that was happening? What did it feel like? Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I want to know, and it's like when I start really thinking about like what was going through that guy's mind when that happened. Like, it really just starts like it's not
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't need to go to those places.
I feel you, dude.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, it's just not good. It's just, again, it's the worst of humanity.
What's gonna kill it's just you feel like shit afterwards. Like I said, man, I've got enough crap that I don't, that I can't, not think about basically, or I'd rather forget. I don't need to watch somebody get their head cut off. I did, especially shit with kids, man. Like, when I see something like that, because X is so unfiltered, I see something that's like kid related, I'm like, nope, not watching that. Like, not fucking at all. Because that'll fuck me up the rest of the day, like, without a doubt. So.
No question.
Yeah, I'm just not. That was never my thing. Though, like I said, the war porn is just
I like that.
You got to keep it. No, you got to keep it to a minimum, man, because it just becomes. You're so desensitized to it. It just becomes like, oh yeah, it's just it's war, it's whatever, and it's okay, I guess, if you're like that and you get that kind of mentality. But I don't think you should, because if it becomes like passe, like a normal like whatever every day, that's just what it is.
That's a problem.
Then it becomes easier for people to push it to be like, yeah, why don't we go to war? Like, oh, whatever. I don't know. I just don't.
I could see that. That's a great point.
I just don't like it. I don't like. I don't know, man. Even if I was in, I would probably watch some of the drone stuff more, just because I'd want to like learn tactics and like, oh, this is what they're doing.
To that, like you're saying.
It's more of a technical. I'm watching it for technical reasons.
Right.
It's like almost an educated. Like, I'm watching this to learn something.
It's not a pastime.
I'm not watching it to watch someone die. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. Now, if I watch it, it's like, what am I getting out of this? Other than I'm watching some dude you watch these Russians and Ukrainian guys sitting there like praying, like looking at the drone, like praying, please don't kill me. And then they fucking smoke them. And it's like, oh man, did I really need to see that? You know, like,
and like, I get it. It's like, like the Russians and Ukrainians are putting these fucking videos out to like scare the other side because they know they got their fucking phone and the internet too. But it's just like, it just sucks seeing it. I agree with you. Like, it's like a propaganda tactic, but it also has tertiary effects that are not good.
Yeah, I can watch strikes on like tanks and stuff better because you're not seeing people. But when it comes down to like seeing bodies, there was an American that was killed recently in Ukraine like 2 weeks ago, and they had him laid out on like a tarp with like 2 other guys that were dead. And I was just like, I saw it on X while I was looking for news.
Yep.
And I was like, oh fuck, I didn't need to see that. Like, Because you look at it and you're like, dude, man, that dude's mom is out there. His mom is going to see this fucking video.
She could come across it, like, yeah.
100%. I remember a guy I knew when I was in, Jason Kalo, who's a JTAC, he was one of the first like E5 JTACs in the Marine Corps. He got killed in Afghanistan, and I don't know if there was a reporter or someone there. He got shot in the head, but he lived for a little bit. He didn't die immediately. And someone got a picture of him in the helo, like of his face, as they're medevacing him out, and he just looks horrible. And when you Googled his name, that's what would show up for the longest time. That was like the first image. And I'm like, man, that's, that's horrible for his family to ever, like, anytime they want to, like, maybe, like, find out more about what he did or more, I don't know, just even putting his name in there to see if there's any news articles. Like, you don't want that to be the first image that his mom and dad sees, or his wife or his kids. He had a wife and 2 kids, and, like, it's just like, that's the shit. It's like, God, man, like, I don't know. I was different. I had a different mindset when I was in the military, because you're in it and you're just kind of, like I said, you're looking at these videos in like a technical way, and you're like trying to learn something here. But now that I'm out, I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need the bodies. I don't need the, it's just not, I don't know. It's just not good,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Rambled about that for a little bit, but
no, I agree with you.
It's just crazy.
It is.
And Instagram, for whatever reason, will feed up all this shit to you. Car wrecks, freaking drone videos,
right.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, no, I agree with you. It's so weird. Like, I can't fucking make a joke or call somebody stupid on Instagram, but OnlyFans hookers and people getting torched alive in Ukraine is totally fine somehow.
I watched a video yesterday. I was watching. It's called ANG News. It's a Los Angeles news, like Instagram news, and they had a film crew out, and literally it was a video of a guy laying dead in the street that had been hit by a car. They didn't blur his body out. Like, if I post a video and someone dies on a video that I post on Instagram, because I am a news channel, I blur it out.
Sure.
It's like, you don't need to see that. And plus, that would probably get my page flagged and taken down anyways, or I would think. This was a straight-up body. You could see the guy's eyes and everything, and it's just that look, like, I don't want to see that. I don't need to see dead bodies anymore. And I don't want to share that with other people. Like, I would never – I was watching, I was like, I cannot believe they did not blur this video. I cannot believe they're just showing this dude's body. Like, and it's not like, oh, he may have survived. No, he's fucking dead. Like, it lists, like, he died. He got hit by multiple cars. And it was like, oh.
Yeah. No, car accidents too, man. Like, I've seen enough of that, on the Autobahn or wherever. Like, there are a lot of car accident shit that is on Instagram for sure. And those are ones I'll scroll by, because, like, I don't need to. Like, I've seen enough people in fucking cars and out of them on the side of the fucking road, or like somebody dragged up underneath the fucking car on a bicycle for 2 fucking clicks or some dumb shit. Just anyway. But
the most morbid thing that I'll watch now, or not even, like, every once in a while, it'll come into my algorithm, or the black box tapes, like as an aircraft is crashing. Yeah. You ever listen to those? Some of those are rough.
Yeah, I have listened to a few, and they are, like, obviously, like, I'm pretty sure anybody our age has listened to the, like, black box recordings from, like, 9/11. Like, I've listened to those, and I've heard a few other ones, like the MH370 or whatever, that Malaysian aircraft that went down. Like, I listened to that one, or whatever happened to it, went down, fucking got sucked into a wormhole or whatever the fuck. But
of course,
yeah. So I mean, I've listened to them. They are rough, because, like, like, dude, there's, like, got to be nothing worse. You're just, like, in a fucking tin can in the sky, and you're gonna hit the fucking ground or the ocean or whatever. Like, pure panic and fear.
Again, I put myself in their situation. I'm like, what was that pilot thinking? He's heading for the ground. He knows this is it, man.
Right. I would imagine he just feels like shit.
Very empathetic situation.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
Probably at that moment, you're, like, probably not thinking much different than everybody else that isn't in the cockpit.
I don't seek that stuff out, for anybody that's wondering. I don't look for it, but if it pops up, I'll watch those kind of things, because it's like, I'm always interested in why planes go down. Like, it's like, I don't know, but it's still morbid.
It's
so morbid
fascination as well. It's like you watch one thing and then you're completely just inundated with it.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Justin, do you want to go ahead and plug where we can find you? And I know you sent me some links that I'll put in our show notes when this drops. This will drop here coming up this Friday or Saturday morning, excuse me. But just where everybody can find you again. And then I'll do a quick shout out for our sponsors, but that way everybody knows where to go get your content, bro.
Yeah. So the Former Action Guys podcast is available, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you can find podcasts, that's available. And then I also run the Former Action News Instagram page, Former Action Guys. Also, so what I do now, after I got out of the military, I went to college here at SDSU, and then I got a degree in advertising and journalism. And I worked in advertising for a little while. So now what I do, I work from home. And I have 2 websites that I sell like custom items on, like clothing and stuff like that. Do a lot of unit orders. So if you want like a unit T-shirt or something, it's mostly Marines, but I can do any branch or whatever. Just hit me up. It's jkramergraphics.com. That's Kramer with a C. So jkramergraphics.com. And then, like I said, my Instagram page is Former Action News and Former Action Guys. And then I'm on Twitter and I'm on Reddit. Also, just look up Former Action Guys and you'll find me there. But I'm all over the place. I'm a one-man show too. I do it all.
Hell yeah, dude. Might hit you up about merch, not even gonna lie. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know what your scope and scale is, but
I do everything, man. I do everything from when I'm talking about promotional stuff. I do merchandise, I do shirts, hoodies, like hats, all that kind of stuff for people. But I do digital marketing. I'm an SEO guy. I'm a Google Ads guy. So I do a lot of consulting for companies to help them improve their website rankings and stuff on Google. So if that's something you're interested in, for those out there, reach out to me. You can go to my J Kramer Graphics. Yeah, go to jkramergraphics.com, and there's a contact us button on that page. Just click there and be like, hey, I want to improve my website's Google rankings or whatever. Shoot me a message, and we can set up a consultation or something like that.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. Obviously, super big thanks to our sponsors, Kill Cliff. If you don't know Kill Cliff, I was chugging one on the show here. Energy drink. They got some pretty awesome flavors. Not gonna lie, that's the Joe Rogan pineapple one. But they got CBD drinks, recovery drinks. Elk's Blood is super fucking good. Head on over to Kill Cliff's website. You can use KC Podcast 20 for 20% off your order over there at Kill Cliff. And then we've also got Protect. Honestly, it's probably the best hydration thing I've used, hydration supplement wise, better than like Liquid IV, I think. But Protect also has like a sleeping aid called Rest that works really good. It's different than taking like a melatonin. Like melatonin will give me like weird dreams and shit. Like this is like, it just like is a relaxation thing. I really, really like it. But you can use I Came With Fire over at Protect. That's PROTEKT for 15% off while using code I Came With Fire. And then a huge shout out as well to Redefine Violence. You go over there, get some MMA gear. You can get some awesome merch from them. You can also use our code I Came With Fire over there for 10% off. And then the Light Sleeper. And all the links and all the codes are in the show notes. So check those guys out. And the best way to support us is to support those sponsors. And we appreciate all those guys over there for helping us out. But anyway, glad to have you on, man. We'd totally have you come on again. We'd love to talk some like news and stuff like that going on. We didn't really get to any of that tonight.
We didn't get it. I was thinking that too. I was like, we're not getting into current events.
Bro, these conversations, man, especially with good folks, it's just so easy to just like roll into them like this. It's almost 3 hours. It really didn't even feel like that, So
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, next time for sure, would love to and have a conversation about whatever's going on. And but yeah, go over and check Justin out there at Former Action Guys Podcast, Former Action News. And check out the show notes for the links. And thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Another episode I Came With Fire podcast. We're going to get out of here. So thank you, Justin.
Thank you all. Thank you, Justin.